Chapter 41. I pulled back into the elevator and slumped into the corner. What was I thinking? Where did I think I was? Who do I think I was? I was a prisoner in the U.S. government building. I was an idiot to think I could just run down the hall from my cell, bang open a door, and run off into the night. I was trapped. I had no way out. Maybe I should turn myself back in and beg for understanding. The doors began to close like the stage curtain closing at the end of the play, and I watched in despair as my only way out disappeared. Hold the door, a woman called. I shrank back, but she stuck her hand in, catching the doors before they closed. She was one of the most beautiful women I had ever seen. She was young and fluid and alive, even here in this cold gray government building, especially here. She could have been on television. She had light brown, Middle Eastern skin, dark hair and dark eyes, and full lips. She was wearing a dark blue skirt, a jacket over a form-fitting white shirt. If she'd passed me at the mall, I would have stared, but I wasn't at the mall. I was on the run in the elevator of a secure government facility. I dropped my eyes to the mail cart, still panicking, still trying desperately to think what to do. Hello, she said, turning her 1,000-watt smile on me. I was so flustered, I didn't even say hello back. You missed the mailroom, she added. I was usually cool around pretty girls at school, but this woman was so beautiful I could barely put two words together. I it's on sublevel 4, isn't it? Where the trucks come in, she said. What? I said dumbly. Sublevel 4, she said again. The mailroom. That's where the big trucks come in from outside? Yeah. I said, yeah, the mailroom. Trucks, outside, access. Probably without all the scanners and cameras and metal detectors. Yeah, I said. She smiled at me again. I felt like my own personal guardian angel was pointing me the right way. My own gorgeous guardian angel. Oh, silly me. I forgot to push my button, she said. She leaned over and pushed a button for sublevel 12. Want me to push 4 for you? She asked me. Yeah, I said. Thanks. We stood next to each other, me trying to ignore how pretty she was, and failing miserably, her probably already having long forgotten I'd existed. She hummed a song while we waited, and distantly I recognized it as the old NSYNC song, Bye Bye Bye. The elevator dinged, and I started to move my cart toward the door, but this was just sublevel 3. One more floor to go. The doors opened, and a white guy in a suit started to step inside. Rick, the woman said. Just the man I was coming to see. She intercepted him, putting his arm in his and walking him back off the elevator. The doors closed on them, and I let out the breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I silently thanked my guardian angel and punched the sublevel 4 button again, even though it was already lit. I had a second chance. Maybe there was some way I could say bye 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 to this place after all. Chapter 42. I stepped off the elevator, pushed the mail cart through thick pieces of hanging plastic, and entered the building's mailroom. It was a huge facility with conveyor belts, wheeled canvas carts big enough to crawl inside, stacks of small plastic mail tubs, and huge sorting areas. At the back of the room were long concrete loading bays and garage doors where semis could back in. Miraculously, one of the bays was open. An unmarked trailer was parked backward in the stall, and the garage door at its head was wide open. I could see darkness outside and freedom. I was giddy just thinking about how close I was. Just a little farther. I would be outside and on my way to Darius. But first, I had to get past the dogs. There were 2 of them, German shepherds, led around on leashes by 2 U.S. soldiers in black fatigues with automatic rifles over their shoulders. The rest of the mailroom was almost empty except for the 2 men in jumpsuits wheeling boxes off the truck on dollies. The soldiers walked in and out of the truck and around the boxes, their dogs sniffing everything. The truck I had to sneak past to get outside. One of the dogs raised its head and looked straight at me, and I hurriedly pushed my mail cart behind a sorting machine. I peeked out again, but the soldiers and mailroom guys hadn't seen me. The dogs knew I was there, but they were trained to sniff for explosives and toxins. I guess not to be watchdogs, but they'd be on to me the second I got anywhere close to that truck, and just when I was so close. I debated just leaving the gun where it was, but eventually I pulled it out from its hiding place under the envelopes. What I was carrying the thing around for, I wasn't going to shoot at anybody with it. I sighed knowing I still couldn't do it, but I had to find some way around that truck. I watched the workers and the soldiers with the dogs, trying to look for some pattern to their movements, some opportunity for me to slip through, but this was no video game with NPCs who marched around on set routines so you could sneak up behind them and knock them out. These were real people, real Americans with jobs and families and lives. I had to get away, but I couldn't hurt anybody doing it. There, on the wall, a fire extinguisher, right beside where the workers were stacking the boxes and the dogs were sniffing them. Adam and I had once watched a video on YouTube of some idiot shooting fire extinguishers. The red canisters erupted like geysers when they were shot, spraying a thick white cloud of carbon dioxide everywhere. Harmless, but really hard to see through the cloud, and they'd made a terrific distraction until these guys figured out what hit them. My hand trembled a little as I popped the gun on a conveyor belt that wasn't running. I took aim very carefully. The fire extinguisher seemed a lot farther across the room than when I'd first come up with the idea, but I was sure I could do it. I shot stuff at a distance all the time in video games. I just had to wait until the four men were close enough to the fire extinguisher to be swallowed up by the cloud, but not so close that I would hit one of them if I missed. I waited, watching them move back and forth, my heart pounding in my chest, and then I saw my chance. I squared up my aim and pulled the trigger. Chapter 43. Nothing happened. The trigger didn't budge. I pulled the gun back and stared at it. Why didn't it shoot? Wait, guns have safeties on them, didn't they? So you couldn't shoot yourself in the foot by accident when you were pulling your gun out of your holster? I searched the sides of the pistol, trying to figure out which of the switches and buttons was safety. I felt way in over my head. I flipped a switch near my thumb to what I figured was shoot, or unsafe maybe, and took aim again. I had to wait forever for everyone to be going the same direction again, but then, at last, I had another chance. I squinted down the short barrel of the gun, held my breath, and squeezed the trigger. The gun kicked like a line drive taking a bad hop, and I ducked reflexively, my ears ringing like crazy. The bang was so loud, then the air was filled with yelling and barking. I peeked out from behind the machine. The fire extinguisher was still there. I'd missed it, and now the soldiers and workers thought somebody was shooting at them. They had all ducked behind the boxes, the soldiers scanning the room with guns in hand. No, I'd ruined everything. I was going to be caught, thrown back into the cell, handcuffed. I had shot at United States soldiers. They would never believe me when I told them I was shooting for the fire extinguisher. The soldiers were yelling into walkie-talkies. In minutes, seconds, security would pour in through the hanging plastic, and I was done for. I had to make a run for it, but I couldn't, not without being seen. I aimed at the fire extinguisher again. They were all still huddled around it, but at least this time they were hiding out of the way. I pulled the trigger and the gun exploded again. Another miss. The soldiers ducked. I tried again and again and again. Nothing. Dang it, how hard was it to hit a fire extinguisher from across the room? The soldiers had figured out where I was from the gunshots. One of them was taking aim at me as I tried one last shot. Thoom! The fire extinguisher exploded, swallowing everything on the side of the room in a white cloud. Yes, I scrambled up from where I knelt, my arms sore, my whole body shaking. I sprinted along the side of the tractor trailer away from the yelling soldiers and barking dogs and into the cold night air. I was free. I'd made it outside. I couldn't stop running, though, not until I was far enough away from the building to hide someplace. I ran up a long, wide concrete ramp to a big, dark parking lot, slipping into the snow as I stopped to get my bearings. Snow! I shuddered in the freezing cold air. I had forgotten it was mid-January, but this was definitely not Arizona or Nevada or New Mexico. Colorado, maybe? Up in the mountains? I couldn't stand around figuring it out. I ran into the among the scattered cars in the parking lot and crouched down, trying to hide. I had to figure out which way to run before I really put my legs into it. I peeked up through the snow-covered car window, and my eyes fell on a giant white obelisk in the distance, with two blinking red lights on the top. Dully, I realized what I was looking at. It was the Washington Monument. The gun slipped from my hand and clattered to the ground as I stood and stared. I wasn't in Arizona or Nevada or California or Colorado. I was in Washington, D.C. Chapter 44. Washington, D.C. I knew that things were serious, that this business was Darius was big time, but not this big. Not fly Cameron Smith to Washington and detain him in the Department of Homeland Security headquarters kind of serious. I realized I was standing in plain sight and dropped back down between the cars. I couldn't see the Washington Monument anymore, almost like it had been a dream. But it hadn't been a dream. I was in Washington, D.C., something like 2,000 miles away from home. I heard shouts from the ramp down to the mailroom. I had to run. I would have to figure out how to get back home later. 2,000 miles? There were trees in the distance beyond the parking lot. I grabbed the gun out of the slush and hurried toward the trees, still crouching. Though I came to the end of a Volvo, looked both ways for guards, and sprinted across the open road to the next line of cars. Safe. I was almost to the end of a big white SUV when I heard a shout behind me and turned to look. I couldn't see anything but cars, but that was a good thing. It meant they couldn't see me either. Just a few more rows, and then I would be into the woods. I turned to the right again, and the burly African-American soldier who'd come to my cell to transfer me stood in my way. I knew it was the same guy because there was dried blood caked around his nose where I'd hit him, and he looked seriously unhappy about it. In a daze, I remembered I still had the gun and raised it, my arm moving like I was underwater. Then the gun wasn't in my hand anymore. It was in the soldier's hand. He'd taken it from me in the blink of an eye. Somebody hit the fast-forward button, and he punched me in the chest, knocked the wind out of me, spun me around, caught me before I sank to my knees, put me in a headlock, one arm around my neck, the other covering my gasping mouth. And just like that, it was all over. I was caught. Chapter 45. My sneakers cut past through the slush in the parking lot as a big soldier dragged me backward, away from Homeland Security Building. A white van screeched up behind us and its side door flung open. Hands grabbed me, dragged me inside, and the door slid shut with a bang. Go, the soldier said, his voice deep and urgent. The van accelerated. It was dark inside, windowless, and it took me as long to catch my breath as it did for my eyes to adjust. I was on the floor of an empty cargo van. Then, there were two seats at the front, only one of them occupied. The driver was a young white guy with sandy brown hair, wearing all black, but that's all I could make out from my angle. The big soldier sat on a low metal bench welded to the van wall behind me, his huge black army boots by my head. Another man, tall but thin, sat in shadow on a bench on the other side of the van, facing me. Well, the shadowy man said, his voice instantly familiar, I have to say you certainly made that a lot harder than it had to be. Mr. Hagen, I said. It was a passing streetlight lit up the inside of the van, illuminating his thin, stubbly face. I sat up. Mr. Hagen? But what? How? Why? All very good questions, Hagen said. Have a seat, and I'll try to answer them all. We don't have much time. A phone rang, and Hagen pulled his out of his pocket and looked at the screen. He held up a finger. I need to take this, he said. He answered it and held it to his ear. Hagen, waited. Escaped, you say? He feigned surprise and looked right at me. Now, how did he do that? I climbed up onto the bench beside the soldier as Hagen listened, and I purposefully slid a few inches away. My chest still throbbed from the big guy's punch. I had been hit a lot in football games, but I had never taken a shot as hard and painful as that man's fist. Did he now? Hagen said. Did he now? Incredible. And you think he had help. I see. Do you have a description of the vehicle? Yes, I see. Yes, of course. I was already headed in. I'm in the car as we speak. If I see the van, I'll do what I can to detain it. Yes, all right. Hagen hung up and put the phone back in his pocket. It seems you managed a daring escape, Cameron Smith. Far more daring than the more prosaic one I had already arranged for you. But you said, Hagen put up a hand. I always meant to break you out. The moment the higher ups told me we were finished, that they had their one and only terrorist plot all taken care of. Thank you very much. Now get back to your cubicle, Mikey Hagen. I knew I had to do something. We had to do something, and that meant getting you away from there. So you believe me? I said. About Darius being in Arizona, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. I'd been so convinced I was alone. I'd been ready for it, ready to go solo, to sacrifice everything to help my brother, if I had to. But to know I had at least one ally, and a smart, connected one at that, was a huge relief. You believe me again? I said. No, Hagen said. I never stopped believing you, but I couldn't very well come into your cell and say, Cameron, I'm sending in a friend of mine with all the right papers to transfer you to another facility, but he's really breaking you out. You noted, of course, the camera in the corner. I turned to look at the big soldier. Hagen had sent him to get me out, and I'd smacked him in the face with a metal tray. The soldier didn't look at me. He was busy disassembling the gun I'd taken from him, and that he had taken back so easily. They'd have heard me, seen me for sure if I'd tried to tell you, Hagen went on. I had to play it the other way. In fact, convince you we were finished, so as to allay suspicion when you did escape. I'd be suspect number one in helping you escape, you see. Close as we were, so I came to you and played the part of insecure intelligence agent, the role I was born to play. I don't mind playing the fool, but I hated to hurt you like that. I'm sorry, Cameron. I shook my head. It didn't matter. All was forgiven. I was in a van speeding away from the building where I'd been held, speeding toward Darius in Arizona. So I went home to watch telly and sent Dane Redman here in for you. Higgins said, nodding at the big guy. Dane's an old friend of mine. His specialty is getting people in and out of dangerous places. He's ex-Special Forces. I knew what that meant. Special Forces soldiers were Green Berets, highly trained elite soldiers who specialize in unconventional warfare. You could drop a team of Green Berets behind enemy lines, and in a week the 12 of them would all walk out again with the warlord they'd been sent in after, without anybody else ever knowing they were there. They were the best of the best. I was only after a routine snatch and grab, Hagen said, but you made it anything but routine. The young sandy-haired driver laughed, a real delighted laugh, like he enjoyed any kind of chaos. First time I ever seen somebody get the drop on Dane, he said, cackling. Took his gun, too. Cameron, meet Jimmy Doreen. Jimmy's our tech guy, Hagen said. The driver waved. He's the one who looped the video on your room when Dane went in. He's also the person who unlocked the key-coded door for you in the stairwell. I stammered. Jimmy laughed again. Wouldn't have had a clue where you were until the system registered all those wrong tries. Mashing all the buttons were particularly nice touch, he said. I killed the alarm you should have triggered and unlocked the door for you. Dane ejected the bullet clip from the butt of his gun and frowned at it. There's 6 bullets missing, he said. He turned his hard eyes on me. You shoot somebody? No. I said, the only thing Cameron killed was one very stubborn fire extinguisher, Hagen said with a grin. Saw that on the security camera feed, Jimmy said from the front seat. Nice trick. I was about to kill the lights for you, but you did all right on your own. It took you 6 shots to hit one fire extinguisher, Dane said. I've never shot a gun before, all right? I said, oh, hang on, guys. Jimmy said, I gotta pick up this hitchhiker. She's a real looker. What? I looked at Hagen, trying to understand. We couldn't stop for hitchhikers. Hagen's eyes told me to wait. The van slid to a stop, and the gorgeous woman from the elevator climbed into the passenger seat. Chapter 46. Jimmy flirted again, and the beautiful woman turned and waved at me. Even here in the van, just the flash of her smile made me blush. Aliyah Sayad, counterterrorism expert and CIA consulate, Hagen said. I had her in the building just in case. Good thing, too. When you went rogue, we had to steer you to the mailroom, and Aaliyah was gracious enough to drop the hint. The late night transfer, the key code in the stairwell, the hint in the elevator, my entire escape had been watched over, orchestrated even, by these 3 guardian angels. For all I knew, Dane had sent security on a wild goose chase after they found him, buying me more time. I never would have gotten out without their help. And here I thought I'd been so clever, so smart, I was an idiot without their help. I would have been caught a dozen times over. Hagen seemed to read my mind. He laughed. Carmen did. You ever happen to hear the story about the man who asked God to help him escape from a flood? You mean like Noah? No, not that flood. A wee bit smaller one. It goes something like this. There's a flood. See, in the waters, they chase the man in our story up onto his roof. The rain keeps falling and the waters keep rising, but our man's not worried. That's because he's sure his God is going to save him. Well, in shorter order, a rowboat comes along, and the man rowing, it tells our man on the roof to jump in. No thanks, says I'm waiting on God to save me, and the man in the rowboat goes along his way. Well, the waters rise, getting ever closer, and along comes a motorboat. But our man's response is the same. Go save someone else, he says. God will save me. So off goes the motorboat and the waters. They come up to our man's feet. Last of all comes a helicopter, and they drop our man a ladder. But what does he tell them? God will save me, I asked. Hagen nodded. He sends the helicopter packing and settles in, waiting for God to save him. While the rain keeps falling and the water keeps rising, and our man, he's swept away and drowns. Being a pious lad, he goes straight to heaven, but when he gets there, he's got a bone to pick with his maker. I had faith in you, he tells God. I prayed to you, believed in you. You said you would save me, but you never did. What's up with that? God shrugs. I sent you a rowboat, a motorboat, and a helicopter. Says he, what more do you want? Dane snorted a laugh. You, Hagen said to me, you are like our man on the roof, only you jumped in and tried to swim before I could even send you the rowboat. So if Dane's the rowboat and I'm the motorboat and Ali is the helicopter, Jimmy said, what's that make you in this story, Mickey? God? Hagen grinned. How close are we? He asked Jimmy. 5 minutes. You get all these people together just to break me out, I asked. I was feeling a little unworthy. Not just to get you out, Hagen said. To go with you to Arizona to find your brother and stop a terrorist attack. Chapter 47. My pulse quickened, so I really was going to do it. We were going to do it. My escape had been worth it after all. Don't think it will be easy, Hagen warned me. These 3 are good, the best, but you'll still have work to do to find your brother, and the authorities will be after you at every turn. And then there's Haydar and Sari. The Iraqi terrorist, Hagen had told me, they thought it was behind everything. He hadn't been captured with the Al Qaeda cell planning to blow up the Women's World Cup. Did that mean he was here in America? Aliyah will brief you on Ansari, Hagen said. Jimmy will keep me in the loop via a secure connection. Dane's in charge of the mission. Hagen leaned forward, his gaze serious. This is dangerous, Cameron. Make no mistake, I'm only sending you along with these 3 because you know everything there is to know about your brother and where they might be keeping him. But you're to do everything they tell you and anything I tell you, Cameron. No arguments. Do you understand? I nodded, glad to have people who actually knew what they were doing to tell me what to do. I glanced at the gun in Dane's hand. And what about Darius? I asked. I've told Dane Darius isn't to be harmed, if at all possible. We're operating under the assumption that he's innocent and has been working to help us to stop Ansari. And if he hasn't, I asked, what then? I was ashamed to doubt my brother, but it had to be said. Then I'll deal with it, Dane said. I shuddered. It didn't make much imagination to think what that might mean. Trust each other, Hagen told us. Work as a team. Time is of the essence. We don't know how long we have before they strike. I'll do everything I can on my end to keep the authorities off your trail. The van slowed. We're here, Jimmy said. Dane slid the van door open and hopped outside. After a quick look around, He nodded to Hagen. Hagen motioned for me to follow him. He led me around to the back of the van, where a mid-sized sedan with government plates was parked in a hidden spot off the road. It was cold out, way colder than anything I was used to in Arizona, and I buried my hands in my pockets and shivered. Hagen pulled a card from his jacket pocket and gave it to me. The only thing written on it was a phone number. Memorize that, then throw it away, Hagen told me. What is it? I asked. A phone number of last resort, he told me. One last fail safe. You call that number from any payphone, any landline, any cell phone in the country, and the cavalry will come riding over the ridge to save you. And may I remind you to arrest you. Consider it a get through, thrown back into jail free card, which would presumably be safer than the alternative. You call the number and it's all over. Understand? Last chance saloon. I nodded. I'm putting you in harm's way, Cameron, which is a wicked thing for me to do to a lad of 17. I started to protest, but Hagen held up a hand. Spare me the I'm a grown man speech, he said. You're a senior in high school, and you've no business playing a cloak and dagger. But the simple fact is, I need you. Your country needs you, as the cliche goes. My brother needs me, I said. That he does, Hagen said. You're a good kid, Cameron, and an even better brother. He held out his hand, and I shook it. Thanks, Mr. Hagen, for everything. Call me Mickey, he said. Dane came around the back of the van. We need to do this, he said. Hagen nodded and sent me back inside the van. He got in the sedan and pulled it out onto the dark, lonely road across both lanes. Jimmy backed the van out and pulled it up to a stop in front of the car, as though Hagen had blocked our path. What are you doing? I asked Jimmy, but Aaliyah shook her head at me. Ahead of us, Mickey Hagen got out of his car with a gun. What's he doing? What's going on? I asked, but nobody answered me. Mickey came around the side of the van. Dane opened the sliding door, raised his gun, and shot Mickey Hagen in the leg. No, I cried, lunging for the door. Mickey! Dane held me back. Go, he told Jimmy. Jimmy floored it, and the van swerved off the road, around Mickey's car, and down the road. What the? What'd you do that for? I cried. Get down, Dane said, and he pushed me to the floor. Bullets ripped into the van, punching holes into the metal doors on the back. The front windshield shattered, but stayed in place. Geez, Mickey, Jimmy cried. The van swerved, screech straightened. I heard more gunshots, but no more of them hit the van. We're good, Jimmy said at last. Dane helped me off the floor. It was Mickey's idea. To make it more convincing, he had nothing to do with your escape. Mickey's idea? To let Dane shoot him in the leg? This was more serious than I thought. Get us to the backup van, Dane told Jimmy, and he settled down on one of the benches to take his gun apart again. I crawled up on the bench across from him, staring at the bullet holes in the back of the van. Mickey had missed anything important on purpose. But next time we ran into authorities, the real authorities, we might not be so lucky. I was officially a wanted fugitive now, and this was officially real. Chapter 48. The motel room was empty when I came back, and with a bucket full of ice. Jimmy was still in the bathroom, and Dana and Aaliyah hadn't come back from the van yet. We were in some little town in West Virginia, well off the main route anybody would take to Arizona. The CIA, the DHS, the FBI, they all knew by now that I thought Darius was in Arizona, so it only stood to reason that's where I'd be headed, unless my abductors were taking me somewhere else. I still couldn't believe I'd sat there and watched Dane shoot Mickey Hagen. I'd seen people get shot before in movies and TV shows, but being there for the real thing, with shocking guns were loaded, made you jump, and to see the bullet rip into Mickey's leg, to know that it was real and not some special effect. I popped open one of the cans of soda Jimmy had brought with him and poured it over a plastic cup full of ice, trying not to think about Mickey. Felt like such a treat now, such an indulgence to have a soda on ice after weeks of milk and juice from cartons. I sipped my drink and turned on the TV to distract myself. I shouldn't have. A photograph of me, my junior yearbook photo of all things, was on the first channel I went to. I winced. It had been weird to see Darius's picture all over the news, to hear famous announcers talking about him. It was even weirder to see my picture and hear people talking about me. Apparently the secret of Cameron Smith was out. Nobody had known I was being held prisoner, but now they all knew. I had escaped. The manhunt was on, Anderson Cooper said. Homegrown terrorists on the run, said Sean Hannity. Rachel Maddow called it a sad new chapter in an increasingly sad story, but the story was the same all over. Cameron Smith and his brother Darius Smith were American terrorists. One of the experts Hannity had on his show, some think tank guy I'd never heard of, said Darius and I had both wanted to join the army so we could take down America from within. They talked about my application to West Point, my time at East Phoenix High School, my run-ins with other kids. Was this really happening? They showed the front of my high school. Then Omar Maldonado, my old teammate, was on camera. He always acted all high and mighty, Omar said, like he was better than everybody else. I knew he was a terrorist. It was just the way he looked at you, like he hated all of us, said Rachel Dubois, a junior girl I had literally never seen before in my entire life. Nobody interviewed Adam or Julia or anybody else I thought had been my friends, but maybe they were saving that for the morning shows. Jimmy came out of the motel bathroom, waving a Zippo lighter around. Dude, sorry about that. That's going to linger. I clicked the TV off. I'd seen more than enough. Jimmy flipped his lighter closed and went straight for the ice, pouring a Red Bull for himself. Jimmy must have been only a few years older than me. He looked like somebody from a college garage band, with long sandy blonde hair, multiple ear piercings, and expensive sneakers. The arms that stuck out from his black Arctic monkeys tour t-shirt were toned and tattooed. Black numbers ran up and down his left arm. You like my ink? He said, catching me staring. He pulled the sleeve of his t-shirt up to show me his whole arm. The numbers were big and small, stacked horizontally and vertically in all different kinds of fonts. IP addresses, he told me. Every super secure site I've cracked is on here. He pointed to different numbers as he said their names. Pacific, Bell, Microsoft, London Times, Bank of America, NASA. You are a hacker? I said. No, a cracker. Hackers just find the exploits. Crackers take advantage of them. Jimmy grinned. I'm what they call in the business a black hat. At least I used to be. Now I guess I'm a white hat, one of the good guys. What happened? Why'd you change hats? Jimmy pointed to one of the largest numbers on his arm. This one right here, United States Department of Defense. That's right, the Pentagon. I was just going in to punk them. Honest, I was going to replace the DoD website with one that looked like the game choice Matthew Broderick gets when he dials in the war games. You know, chess, poker, tic-tac-toe, global thermonuclear war. I shrugged and shook my head. I had no idea what he was talking about. Jimmy threw up his arms. Nobody watches the classics anymore. Anyway, they caught me. Stupid, really. I should have bounced a signal through a few more onion layers of symmetric encryption. Got cocky, got caught. So I cut a deal. I'd tell them how I got in and how to fix it, and they wouldn't throw me in jail for the rest of my life. Opened up a whole new career for me. Now all kinds of companies pay me to test out their internet security. He pretended to take off a hat and put on another one. Black hat off, white hat on. I never made so much money. I've even done work for the CIA. That's how I met Mickey. Of course, the DoD still makes me wear a GPS ankle monitor. Jimmy hiked up his pant leg to show me a black gizmo strapped to his ankle. You're wearing a GPS monitor, I said, but that means they can track you. Track us. Chill, dude, Jimmy said. I cracked this thing the day they put it on me. As far as the good old US of A knows, I'm at a video game convention in Orlando. Dane and Aaliyah came back with armloads of bags and equipment, and I hurried to take one of them from Aaliyah. She smiled at my zealous chivalry, like she was on to me, but still appreciative. She had changed clothes from before, trading in her business suit for jeans and a t-shirt that read Backstreet Boys, and showed a printed photo of the band. What happened? I asked, nodding at her t-shirt. Did you have to go shopping at the Goodwill? Aaliyah's bright smile suddenly switched off, and she gave me an icy stare. I knew immediately that I'd made a mistake, and my heart sank. Jimmy hooted, Oh ho, you've done it now, kid. Nobody makes fun of the boys around the princess and lives. I'm sorry, I said, my face hot with embarrassment. I didn't mean you only get one warning, Aaliyah said, perfectly serious, and I'm not a princess, she told Jimmy. You checked the room for bugs? Dane asked. Yeah, Jimmy said. Gave the place a sweep. We're clean. Aaliyah latched the door and flipped the security lock. Are we? Are we all sleeping in the same room? I asked. I mean, is Aaliyah? Yes, Dane said. It's more secure. Jimmy grinned. You were thinking maybe you two could share a room, cowboy? My face must have been as red as Jimmy's soda can. No, I didn't mean. Just ignore him, Aaliyah said. She set up a laptop on a little table by the window and pulled out a chair. Now have a seat, Cameron. It's time you learned all about Haydar Ansari. Chapter 49. Haydar Ansari, Aaliyah said, aka the Lion. Aaliyah called up a picture of a boy playing soccer. There were other players in the foreground, and the picture was kind of blurry, but the shot was clear enough to see that Ansari was a good looking guy with olive skin and dark hair, curly hair. He's just a teenager, I said. Was. He's in his 40s now, but this is the only confirmed picture we have of him. Aaliyah said. I stared at the picture. It could have been me, playing soccer instead of football. We didn't resemble each other all that much, but for at least one brief innocent moment, both our lives had been about nothing more than scoring a goal or a touchdown, not politics. Haydar Ansari was born into a well-to-do family from Tikrit, Iraq, the same city where Saddam Hussein was raised. Aaliyah explained. Ansari is distantly related to Hussein, in fact, third cousin 3 times removed. Fathers, brothers, nephews, cousins, former roommate. Jimmy joked. He hopped on one of the beds with his laptop and groaned. Ow, who picked this motel? These mattresses are like stone. Dane thumped a heavy canvas duffel bag on the other bed. I've slept on stone before, he said. This is better. Aaliyah ignored them. Ansari's family was rewarded with power and wealth when Hussein took power. Wealth and power they lost when Baghdad fell and Saddam was defeated during Operation Iraqi Freedom. You were in that one, weren't you, Dane? Jimmy asked. Dane didn't look up from the bag he was rooting through. I was in that one, he said. As a part of the ruling Ba'ath Party, Ansari's family lost everything in the war. To escape prosecution from the new Shia government, they fled to Syria. When Ansari spent the rest of his youth angry at the United States for ruining his life, it wasn't long, of course, before he fell in with Al Qaeda. As you do, Jimmy said. As you do, Aaliyah said. Ansari went on to make a new name for himself, going to university and becoming a successful businessman in his own right. We now know he was funneling much of that money back into Al Qaeda. When Osama bin Laden was killed in 2011, Al Qaeda effectively splintered into dozens of smaller anonymous cells around the world, which was how it was designed to operate in the first place. Soon after, Haidar Ansari went from merely funding militant activities to leading them, becoming the leader of particularly dangerous cell in Afghanistan. My eyes went from the picture of the young Haidar Ansari to the file on him on Aliyah's screen. The beginning read like the bio of any regular guy. Born, went to school, married a Syrian woman named Bashiria, had kids, a home, a career, but in 2011 he'd given it all up, left it all behind to become a black masked face in Al Qaeda video, leading terrorist attacks from a hidden bunker somewhere inside Afghanistan. Ansari's cell has been responsible for some of the worst attacks on U.S. servicemen and civilians in years. Aaliyah said, We know it's him, but we still haven't been able to catch him. She called up a picture of a bombed out building in a dusty desert town. We thought we'd killed him with a drone strike 3 years ago, but 6 months later, he claimed responsibility for a bombing in Egypt that killed 6 Americans. He's like a cockroach. We step on him, but he just comes back. Just like Lindsay Lohan, Jimmy said. We don't know where he is, but we do know that he's alive, Aaliyah said. If you and Mickey are right, and he is in America, Aaliyah shook her head. If he is here, why? What's his target? Dane asked. Ansari's trademarks are intricate plots and false clues. It's all about misdirection, Aaliyah said, which is why I agree with Mickey. He meant for us to uncover the Women's World Cup plot. He wants us to think we're safe. That's when we'll strike, and it'll be big. Whatever it is, he wants an audience. He wants to scare as many people as possible. And if he's in America, he'll want to do it soon, before he's discovered, Dane said. Here's something that might help, Jimmy said. He turned his computer around. Mickey just sent us your brother's latest music video. Chapter 50. Another video from Darius? We all gathered around Jimmy's computer. Darius read another prepared statement off a piece of paper. He looked older, more tired. His beard was long now. I almost didn't recognize him. There was almost nothing of the old Darius I knew and loved there on the screen. Is this how Haidar Ansari's wife and children felt as they watched him transform into a terrorist, watched him become someone they didn't know anymore? I tried to focus on what Darius was saying. It was the usual death to America stuff, and then Darius dropped two Rostam clues. The first was Rostam versus Godzilla, a story we'd made up after watching a bunch of Japanese monster movies on cable one afternoon. The other was the bit about the Joker's goons again. I sat back on the rock-hard bed, deflated. What? Jimmy asked. What is it? It's the same code he used before, I said, the one about football. But the other clue is new, isn't it? Aaliyah said. About Godzilla? Yeah, Rostam and Sayavash have to fight Godzilla. We couldn't beat him, so we lured him into a rocket ship full of hot dogs and blasted him into space, Jimmy snickered. We were little kids, I argued for what felt like a millionth time. What I want to know is why Darius is still talking about the Women's World Cup. To make sure you got it, Dane said. But we took care of it already, I said. The CIA, the Army, whoever, they stopped it. Maybe they haven't heard, Jimmy said. Maybe they've got their heads buried too far in the sand. No, Aaliyah said. I refuse to believe Ansaria doesn't know. Even if their contacts didn't tell them, it was all over the news. In every newspaper in the world. It was even on ESPN. Haidar Ansari knows. His World Cup bomb plot was foiled, but I think he wanted it to be. Plans within plans, Dane asked. Precisely, Aaliyah said. Give the CIA a bomb plot in Canada to throw us off the scent of what he's really up to here in America. Something he's kept too secret. Not even Darius knows about it, unless there's a clue to it in your Godzilla story. Ansari's going to fire a rocket full of hot dogs at us? Jimmy joked. Yes, it doesn't sound very helpful, Aaliyah said. But why give the Joker's goons a clue again? I asked. Aaliyah shrugged. I suspect your brother's access to information from the outside world is more limited, and he doesn't know that the Women's World Cup plot was foiled. As Jimmy says, he's just making sure we got the message. And as long as Darius doesn't know anything, we don't know anything. She bit her lip. We really needed a new clue right about now, but this video is worthless. No, I said. No, it has to mean something. The Godzilla clue is new. I had Jimmy play the video again for me. I stared at Darius as he read. What are you trying to tell me, Darius? What are you trying to say? I know you're trying to tell me something. He came to the part again about the Joker's goons, and I remember playing football with him that day in the backyard. Then suddenly I had it. What Darius meant the first time and what he meant now. What Haydar Ansari was doing in America. What he was going to attack. Oh my god, I said. Hopped up and started pacing the room. Oh my god, we were so stupid. What? Aaliyah asked. What is it? Okay, I said, still pacing. Thoughts were coming at me like quarterback blitz. I couldn't find the words. Where to begin? Okay, yes, sorry. So, what if Darius does know there's another plot? What if the thing about the Joker's goons did mean the Women's World Cup the first time, but means something different this time? Something different, Aaliyah said, but it's the same story, the same reference. The clue was all about a bomb and a football, I said. Mickey thought that meant football like soccer. It was, Jane said. They found the cell with stadium plans and everything. But you said Ansari was all about misdirection, tricks. He's clever and he likes to show it. So what if this attack's the same, but different? Everybody was frowning at me. I wasn't explaining it right. Look, okay, we know Ansari is in America, right? We think so, or we wouldn't be here right now, Aaliyah said. So he's here in America, in Arizona, and he wants a big target, you said. Something with an audience? I said. I waited for them to get it, but they just stared at me. In frustration, I grabbed the remote control and turned the TV on. Instead of one of the news channels, I clicked over to ESPN, and Welcome Back to Sports Center, an announcer said, with Super Bowl 49 just a week away, all eyes are on host city Phoenix, Arizona, where the teams met the media today. For more on the press conference, we go to Emily Reed, live at the University of Phoenix Stadium, Emily. Oh, Frank, Jimmy said. Emily Reed, microphone in hand, started talking about the upcoming Super Bowl. I turned to face the others in the room. You want a big audience? I said. You want to scare the most people you possibly can? What about setting off a bomb in front of 100 million viewers on TV? Aaliyah got up and started pacing. Dane stared at the floor. No, Jimmy said. No way. The security on that building and the day of the game will be like the Pentagon. And trust me, I know what that's like. We're talking barricades, metal detectors, dogs, a 30-mile no-fly zone patrolled by F-16s. The place is a fortress. Nobody's crazy enough to hit that Super Bowl. It makes sense, though, doesn't it? I asked, why bring Darius to America if the target is in some other country? Because it's not. It's right here, and it's always been about football. Mickey thought that meant soccer. Darius too, at first. That's a distraction, the misdirection, but it's always been about American football. Darius must have figured it out. A plan within a plan, Aaliyah said. You can't possibly be serious, Jimmy said. I'm telling you, it's impossible. Impossible or not, we need to get DHS on this, Dane said. FBI, CIA, tell Mickey. Jimmy tossed his laptop on the bed. I need another Red Bull. As he dipped his plastic cup into the ice bucket, Dane grabbed his wrist. Who got ice? Dane said. His voice was low and scared. Like having ice in the room was the worst thing that had ever happened in the history of the world. Me? I said, confused. Dane's dark eyes turned on Jimmy like he'd just betrayed us all. You let him out of your sight? Jimmy yanked his wrist free and rubbed it. I had to go to the can. Dane turned on me, his eyes still smoldering, and I shrank back. Did anybody see you? I don't know. Maybe, I said. There was this guy going into a room, but Dane hurried to the front window and peeked out behind the curtain. Red lights glinted on the glass. Everybody down, Dane cried, and a tear gas cartridge trailing white smoke came crashing through the window. Chapter 51. A white cloud was already starting to form in the room. As I dropped to the floor, I could feel my eyes tearing up, my nose and throat beginning to burn. Dane dove between the beds for the smoking cartridge. He came up with it in one hand, the other arm wrapped around his face. It looked like a Roman candle, one end of it burning bright and pouring white smoke. I couldn't believe it. Who grabbed tear gas cartridges? What was he doing? The smoke was making me hack up a lung, and I was halfway across the room. Dane stuffed the smoke cartridge into the ice bucket, flame first, and it fizzled out. We don't have much time, he said, his voice ragged. Bathroom vent. Jimmy disappeared into the bathroom, and seconds later I heard the fan running, drawing out the tear gas, still in the air. Bullets shattered what was left of the window, and I hit the deck. Dane grabbed one of the mattresses and flipped it up against the broken window. I threw my hands over my head and tried to become one with the sticky motel carpet. Dane tossed Aaliyah a smaller duffel bag. Back the wall, he told her, and he hurried to the bathroom vanity at the back of the room as Jimmy came out. Dane flipped the other mattresses up against the far wall like a pillow fort. Get him underneath, he yelled. Jimmy grabbed his laptop, then me, and together we scrambled for the space between the mattresses and the wall. I didn't see how it was going to help. The bullets were shredding the mattresses up against the window. They were shooting at us. I couldn't believe it. They're shooting at us. I said, yeah, Jimmy said. They tend to do that when you shoot your way out of a Department of Homeland Security facility. I only shot a fire extinguisher, I said. A bullet hit the TV and Emily Reed disappeared with a spark and an electric sizzle. Dane yanked the busted TV off its base and chucked it against the door, pilling the table and chairs on top of it. He didn't want the soldiers getting in, and clearly that wasn't the way he was planning on getting out. Jimmy hastily stuffed his computer into his backpack. They'll be through that door any second now, he said. Dane pulled his pistol, flipped the safety off, and pointed it at the door. He's not going to shoot them, is he? I asked. The point here is to prove I'm not a terrorist, right? Dane heard me above the gunfire and pulled his gun back. Aaliyah, he called. Explosives set, Aaliyah cried. Explosives, I said. Dane pushed me and Jimmy under the mattress, propped against the wall, and Aaliyah crammed in with us. Thoom! The room shook as the explosives went off, taking out the whole back wall where the bathroom had been. Water from the broken pipes sprayed like fountains among the shredded wooden studs and broken drywall. Out the back through the hole was the rear parking lot, and in it, our van. Chapter 52. The van's tires hummed on the blacktop, its headlight cutting a dozen yards off road and trees and hills out of the darkness. Dane was at the wheel, driving so fast it felt like we were flying. None of us spoke for a long time, each of us, I think, listening for the sound of more gunshots. But eventually there was nothing but the rattle of the van. We wouldn't stop again that night. I knew, not after the debacle at the motel. If it were up to me, we wouldn't stop again until we got to Arizona. Call Mick, Dane said at last, his voice waking us all like an alarm clock. Jimmy flipped open his laptop and went through an elaborate series of windows and screens until one of them finally showed a sleepy-eyed but still fully dressed and awake Mickey Hagan. He was somewhere with a lot of bookshelves behind him. Maybe his house? Cameron, Aaliyah, Jimmy, he said, is Dane with you? Are you all right? Yes, Aaliyah told him, but just barely. We were made at the hotel. I know, Mickey said. You knew? I said, and you didn't warn us? They were shooting at us, tear gas, real bullets. We could have been killed. I'm sorry, Mickey said. I knew they were coming for you, but I couldn't warn you. They let me find out about it in advance, accidentally on purpose, I think, to see if I was a leak, to see if I was really in communication with you. I still couldn't believe it. There had to be some way Mickey could have gotten us word, tipped us off. Jimmy saw the anger and confusion on my face and laughed. Welcome to the spy business, kid. It's all part of the game. What bothers me is that they were so obvious about it, Mickey said. Nobody includes you in briefings for 20 years, then all of a sudden you're pulled out of the hospital and driven to Langley? What a load of bollocks. The hospital, Mickey's leg. Of course, Dane had shot him. The image of that bullet punching a bloody hole in Mickey's leg would be forever stuck in my head. Is your leg okay? I asked. Mickey smiled. It's kind of you to ask. Yes, hurts like the devil, but I've had worse. Dane knows his business. It was a clean shot, straight through, no broken bones, nothing that won't heal. It is what it is, all part of the game, as Jimmy says. He held up a cane. On the plus side, now I have something to shake at the neighborhood children when I tell them to get off my lawn. He smiled weakly. I'm just knackered is all. It's been a long day. Did you have a chance to watch the new video from your brother? Ellie and I told Mickey all about our guess that the football clue was really about the Super Bowl and the story of the Rostam and Sayavash versus Godzilla. When we were finished, he looked as horrified as the thought of an attack on the Super Bowl as we were. It does make sense, Mickey said, though Jimmy's not wrong. Security around that stadium on game day will be better than what the president got when he visited Afghanistan. But that shouldn't stop us from investigating it. I'll pass it along as though I'm putting my own interpretation on it. If they don't buy it, we'll have to trust Super Bowl security to stop whatever it is. In that Godzilla story, hot dogs, Aaliyah said. Maybe something to do with food services at the Super Bowl. Hey, that's good. Gives me a place to start. Anyway, I'll look into it. In the meantime, try to get to Arizona as quickly as possible without getting yourselves killed. Chapter 53. The adrenaline rush from the attack on our motel room kept me awake for a little while longer, and I spent the time memorizing the phone number Mickey had given me. After about an hour, though, I crashed hard. When I woke up on the roll-out foam mattress on the floor of the van, I was stiff and sore, and the sun had already come up. Jimmy was now at the wheel. Aaliyah had her eyes closed, listening to music on headphones in the passenger seat, and Dane sat on one of the benches in the back, eating an apple. Hungry? He asked, holding a banana out to me. I realized I was famished, and took it from him greedily. It took a little while for the grogginess and stiffness to wear off, but the banana helped. So did the silence. "Where are we?" I asked at last. "Just past Louisville, Kentucky," Dane said. "Making good time. You drink coffee?" I didn't. Dane passed me a bottle of grapefruit juice instead. Dane and I had been together now for almost a full day, and I hadn't really looked at him. In fact, I was always doing anything I could to look away from him. He was big, strong. His biceps seemed as big as my thighs. His hair was cut short on top, almost close enough to make him bald. And he had a black mustache. The main thing about him was his stillness. He never seemed to move unless he had to. His nose was bandaged with tape, white gauze. "Sorry about your nose," I told him. His head turned. It was as unsettling as watching a statue's head swivel slowly to look at you. "Don't be," he said. "Initiative is good. Sometimes it's the only thing between life and death. You didn't know I was there to help you, so you helped yourself. But you're not always going to have a metal tray around. You'll learn more when you're at cadet at West Point. But I can teach you a few quick and dirty defensive moves now, if you want." Yeah, that'd be great," I said. "But I'm not going to West Point. Mick said you were." "Well, I was, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going now." "You'll get back in after we clear your brother's name," Dane said. I was touched. "Do you really believe Darius is innocent?" "Of course," Dane said. "He's a ranger. Rangers don't quit. And they don't surrender. It's not a ranger word." And that was that. Dane believed down in the core of his being that my brother was innocent for no other reason than because he was a United States Ranger. It was unthinkable to him that a ranger could ever turn on his own country. I wished everybody thought that way. Dane ejected the cartridges of bullets from his pistol and cleared the firing chamber, clicking the trigger a few times with the gun pointed down and away at the floor just to be sure. "Let's say somebody's got a gun on you," Dane said. "You don't want to die. What's the first thing you do? Try to take it away?" "No," Dane said. "You do nothing. You don't want to die. You do what they tell you. You're being robbed. You give them whatever they want. Your life is always worth more, and trying to disarm somebody else is the number one way to get yourself shot. Second, if you can, you run. Get as much distance and obstacles between you and the gun as possible. You engage, your odds of getting shot go way up. Got it?" I nodded. "Now," he said, "if you know your assailant is going to shoot you, you want to try to disarm him." He aimed the empty gun at me. "Take the gun away. Here. You think your attacker is going to move someplace more convenient if you ask him?" I stared at the gun in Dane's big hands, then tried to grab it as fast as I could. Click. The bullet he would have fired would have gone straight in my brain. "Don't grab up," he told me. "Grab down." Again. Click. I grabbed down, but I was gut shot before I could pull the gun free. "Get yourself out of the direct line of fire. Go toward the side with the gun. It's easier for me to come around across my body than it is for me to swing out wide. See?" Again. I moved, grabbed his wrist, pushed down. Click. Still dead, or at least shot in the leg like Mickey. "Better," Dane said. "Grab the weapon, not the wrist. Your goal here is to control the weapon." He put my hand on the gun, bent my wrist back with the weapon in your hand, all the way back. "That's a joint lock. Hardest position for me to do anything with my hand. Then, while you got my weapon locked away from you, that's when your counterattack. Counterattack? Something fast, something painful. Kick him in the groin, hit him in the throat, clawed his face." "That's not very honorable," I said. "Honor's got nothing to do with it. This is about survival. It's you or him." Dane released the tension in his arm, and I let you go. "You use leverage and pain to get the weapon. Then, when you got it, you unload it. Discharge it, kick it, or toss it away. Shouldn't I aim it at my attacker? You got it from him. Who's to say he won't get it back?" "No, not until you're a trained soldier. Even then, the best way to survive a gunfight is to not be in one. Worst he can do without a gun is beat the snot out of you. Worst he can do with one is shoot you dead. You get rid of the weapon and you run away. Call for help. Let's do it again. Just the leverage part." I tried to do everything he told me. Twisted, grabbed the gun, tried to push his wrist back into a joint lock. It was like trying to snap a telephone pole. I was strong for a high school senior, but I was still just 17. Dane kept the gun pointed right at me. He let me struggle helplessly for a few seconds before pulling the trigger. Click. "And the last part of the lesson is the most important part of the lesson," he said. "Don't ever try this stuff on somebody a lot stronger than you." "Great," I said. "So I just needed my attacker to be either my grandmother or a freshman in high school." Dane laughed. "You'll get bigger, and the army will make you stronger, cadet." "If I get in," I said. "I told you, you'll get in," Dane said. "Let's do it again. I'll go easy on you this time." We practiced the move again and again. Dane pushing back, but not so much that I couldn't push him back. By the end, I at least knew what I was supposed to do. even if I wasn't doing it all that well. Mickey just sent the signal, Jimmy said from the driver's seat. He had his cell phone in his hand, reading the screen. He wants to chat. Chapter 54. Jimmy pulled into the gas station. We refilled, bought snacks, and made bathroom runs, then huddled around Jimmy's laptop to talk to Mickey together, ate a Slim Jim, and sipped a Dr. Pepper as Jimmy finished the complicated process of establishing the secret secure connection. This time, Mickey was sitting in his car. He looked better, though, more rested. He hadn't slept on the floor of a van like me. I ran the Super Bowl idea by the big brains, he said. They're as credulous as you are, Jimmy. Still, I think they at least said something to Super Bowl security so they'll know to be on higher alert, such as it can get any higher. But it's all the more reason for us to have gotten you out of there, Cameron. I don't understand, I said. If the CIA isn't going to do something about this, we have to, Mickey explained. I ran down your food services angle, Aaliyah. The food concessions for the Super Bowl are being supplied by Kendall Food Services, which distribute out of Nashville, Tennessee. Dane glanced at Jimmy, who immediately pulled out a tablet to look them up. So far, it's the best interpretation of Darius's clue we've got, assuming he really is talking about the Super Bowl. The food delivery isn't supposed to leave Nashville until later tonight. Dane, I want you and the team to check it out. But what about Darius? I asked. The Super Bowl is in 4 days. We have to find him. Our priority is preventing an attack on the United States, Mickey said. Darius knows that. He's a ranger, Dane said. He's ready to die for that. Mickey quickly held up his hands. Not that we aren't going to do everything we can to prevent that from happening, Cameron, he assured me. But Dane's right. Your brother is a soldier, a very good one, until just a few months ago, by all accounts, and perhaps even better since. He's doing what he can to stop this terrorist attack, and now we have to do as well. If the target is the Super Bowl, we have time. Not much time, but time. And if we do foil whatever it is Ansari has planned, it'll all be over well before then. It'll all be over. And then they won't need Darius anymore. I thought we'll kill Hadar Ansari's terrorist plot and Hadar Ansari will kill Darius. Chapter 55. Can you check again? Leah said to the security guard behind the desk at the Kendall Food Services warehouse facility. My name is Hannah Nazari. Nazari, Channel 5 News. She held out the microphone she was carrying like she was talking into it. You haven't seen me on TV? Aaliyah certainly looked the part. She was prettier even than ESPN's Emily Reed, who also had dark hair and olive skin. Aaliyah had changed back into the sharp gray business suit and black high heels she'd worn at the DHS building. I couldn't help staring at her, then chided myself for it. I'm sorry, the security guard said. A badge pinned to his shirt said, Boss. I didn't know if that was his name or the security company's name. I don't have any record of anybody agreeing to let a film crew in here tonight, he told us. It's just a puff piece, Aaliyah said. Supersized food trucks off to the Super Bowl. Nashville feeds the Super Bowl's hungry fans. Great publicity for Kendall Food Services. The outside door opened and Jimmy came into the lobby wearing a blue jumpsuit and a white hard hat carrying 2 bags of tools. Bell South, he said. Somebody called about phone line repair. Yeah, the security guard said. Down the hall and, Chris, what was the name of the person we talked to? Aaliyah interrupted. She was talking to me. Chris was my ally for this little performance. I was supposed to be her cameraman, though. How anybody could take me seriously with the video cameras Jimmy had given me, I didn't know. It wasn't a little home handheld version, but it wasn't one of those big things you had to lug around on your shoulder either. Aaliyah was waiting. I picked a name from the directory on the wall over where I stood, like I was supposed to. Murray, I said. Murphy, something like that. William Murphy, the security guard said. In public relations? Yes, that's the one, Aaliyah said. Could you call him? Ma'am, it's 10:45 at night, which means the 11 o'clock news starts in 15 minutes, Aaliyah told him. Hey, Bob, Jimmy said. Router room? Sorry, the guard said, flustered. Down the hall and to the right. Signs on the door. Jimmy nodded and strolled off down the hall. Aaliyah stalled, babbling on to the security guard about the recent features she'd done to give Jimmy time to get where he was going. Okay, go, Jimmy said. I almost jumped as his voice came through loud and clear in the earbuds. Aaliyah and I wore, please, could you call him? Aaliyah begged the security guard. I don't know why Mr. Murphy didn't leave word, but we did talk about it, and I'm supposed to go live in 20. The security guard relented. I'll call. I looked around nervously while the security guard picked up the phone and dialed. I didn't understand how this next part could work, but Jimmy had assured us he could do it. Mr. Murphy, the security guard said. He put a finger to his other ear like he was trying to hear the phone better. Mr. Murphy, this is Clifford Voss, night security at the distribution center. Yes, I'm sorry to interrupt your party, but there's a Miss Nazari. Aaliyah told him. Channel 5? Miss Nazari here from Channel 5? And she says yes, sir. That's right. No, sir. Somewhere down the hall, not very far from here. Jimmy had patched himself into the warehouse's outgoing phone lines. The name I'd read out while he was in the lobby had told him who the security guard was going to call, and all he'd had to do was intercept the call and pretend to be Mr. William Murphy. I hadn't believed him when he'd said it would be a piece of cake, and I still worried that the person Clifford Voss was talking to on the other end of that line was the real Miss William Murphy. I see all right, sir. Thank you. Sorry to bother you. Yes, sir. You too. Mr. Voss hung up and looked at us suspiciously. My eyes flicked to the door, ready to run. Chapter 56. Mr. Murphy sends his apologies, the security guard said. He says he talked to you, but he just forgot to leave word with security. Well, of course he did, Aaliyah said. She was already walking for the door to the warehouse. Thank you, Mr. Voss. We know where to go. I'll call the floor manager on duty tonight and let him know you're on your way. Voss said, Terrific. Aaliyah called over her shoulder as I hurried along behind her. Thank you. The swinging doors thumped closed behind us, and I let out a breath. Aaliyah didn't seem a bit nervous, though, clicking briskly along the concrete corridor in her high heels. She put a hand to the four-way communicator she wore in her ear. Hey, bub, she said quietly, imitating Jimmy from before. Who are you? Wolverine? She knows the Wolverine. Jimmy's voice came through on her earbud and mine, but still my fanboy at heart. Cameron, you've got competition, kid. I blushed. I'd hoped my mini crush on Aaliyah wasn't quite so obvious. Cut the chatter, Dane said through the earbuds. He was linked in too. He could hear everything we said to each other. We've got a job to do, Jimmy. We need shipping manifests, authorization papers, yada, 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 Jimmy said. I know the routine. Give me 10 minutes and I can tell you what the CEO had for breakfast this morning. Jimmy's job was to hack into the warehouse's computers and look for evidence that anything was amiss. I brushed against a water cooler, almost overturning it in a clumsy attempt to keep up with Aaliyah's brisk pace. She slowed down for me. You're nervous, aren't you? She said. Yeah, I admitted. I was supposed to be studying for midterms right now, not going undercover with an elite ops group. I didn't want to mess up, but I had another worry too. You're doing great, Aaliyah told me. Just keep following my lead. If we do find something, I said, giving voice to my greatest fear, if we do uncover some kind of plot and stop Hadar Ansari, and Ansari's been using Darius to feed us false information, doesn't that mean he won't need Darius anymore? That he could kill him? Aaliyah nodded, her eyes sympathetic. It's possible, but I'm not going to give up on him, Cameron. When this is over, we'll find him and clear his name, no matter what. Why are you doing this? I asked. What? This helping me, helping Darius, working for Mickey. Aaliyah took a deep breath, and for a few moments, the only sound was her heels clicking along on the floor. We came to a door and pushed through it. Between us and the loading docks, at the far end of the compound, was a long warehouse full of boxes marked Kendall Food Services. There wasn't a soul around. It was, after all, almost 11 o'clock at night. How old were you when September 11th happened? She asked at last. 3. I felt very young all of a sudden. I was 14, she said, a freshman in high school. Exeter, you know it? I shook my head. Big fancy boarding school in New Hampshire. Hadn't even been there a month. Didn't have any friends. Wasn't in any clubs yet, and after September 11th, nobody wanted me to be their friend or be in any of their clubs. It was exactly the same thing that had happened to me when Darius hit the news. I knew exactly how she must have felt. The looks, the whispers, the snubs, and I told her so. Right, so take what you went through for 2 weeks and multiply that by 4 years. My father wanted to pull me out of Exeter, send me to school in Switzerland, but I begged him to let me stay. Maybe a little bit of it was out of stubbornness, but mostly it was because I loved America. I dreamed of coming here since I was a little girl. I loved American TV, American movies, American food, American boy bands, I said. She smiled. No, I worshipped American boy bands. She told you who played her sweet 16 birthday party? Jimmy cut in on our earpieces, making me jump all over again. I'd forgotten he and Dane were still listening in sync. Her rich daddy paid them to play just for her. Justin kissed me, Aaliyah said dreamily. Right here. She pointed to a place on her cheek, and I laughed, but she was totally serious. Everybody from school was there, of course, so excited, but they just came for the concert. They were never really my friends, none of them. They never got close enough to me for that. You asked me why I do this, and that's why. September 11th crystallized me, changed me, made me want to prove all the haters that not all Muslims are radical terrorists. So after I graduated, I went to Georgetown to study international relations, specifically Arab relations with the West. That's where Mickey found me. He hired me right out of college as a CIA consultant, and I've never looked back. When he told me about your and Darius's situation, I was in. No brainer. I nodded. Living in my little bubble in Phoenix, it had never occurred to me that there could be somebody else out there who got what I'd been going through so completely. somebody who had experienced the same prejudice I did, and was doing everything she could to undo it. At last, we reached a warehouse where a skeleton crew was filling refrigerated tractor trailer trucks with pallets of plastic wrapped Kendall Food Services boxes, and I did a double take. I knew one of the people loading the trucks. Chapter 57. It was Dane. He wore the brown pants and work short of Kendall Food Services, and he was checking off loaded pallets with an electronic scanner. I knew it was his job and his little performance to infiltrate the warehouse unofficially through the back door, but I was still surprised at how thoroughly he had done it. The Green Berets really were amazing at getting into a place and blending in without causing a ripple. A red-faced white guy in a white shirt and brown tie hustled over to us, fresh sweat stains wringing his armpits, and he dabbed his balding, sweaty head with a handkerchief. I'm Fred Sorensen, he said, stopping us in our tracks. Nobody told me you were coming. He looked at my camera like it was a bazooka. You want to film the food being loaded onto the trucks? He looked around. Why? Puff piece, Aaliyah said again, slipping easily back into character. Nashville Food Company feeds hungry Super Bowl fans. It's Super Bowl all the time on TV right now. Fred Sorensen swallowed and patted his head again with his handkerchief. The man looked like he was about to have a heart attack, and Aaliyah had to notice it too. Well, maybe just some shots of the food trucks leaving, then, he said. Jimmy's voice was suddenly in our ears again. We could hear him, but for Fred Sorensen couldn't. This is interesting, Jimmy said. All the other food, french fries, nachos, popcorn, candy, came from their usual vendors, but their usual hot dog vendor couldn't deliver. Last minute refrigeration failure at the hot dog supplier's facility in Chicago. Kendall Food Services had to go to a secondary supplier in Houston. Hot dogs just came in this afternoon. Hot dogs? That's what Darius and I had pretended to lure Godzilla into the rocket with. Actually, Aaliyah said to Sorensen, super smooth, we thought we might open a box or two, show the actual food that's being shipped out, something American, something that says football. A box of hot dogs, for example. Fred Sorensen practically spluttered. Haha, hot dogs? Behind him, Dane left one tractor trailer and hopped up into another to look for the boxes of hot dogs. I don't think that's a good idea, Sorensen said. You really ought to go, please. Dane's voice came low and steady in our ears. Got 'em. Only the top boxes are filled with hot dogs, he said. The rest are filled with plastic explosive, C4 enough to level an entire stadium. Chapter 58. Aaliyah dropped the mic, grabbed the floor manager by the shirt, and slammed him up against a stack of boxes. Why are those hot dog boxes filled with C4? Fred Sorensen collapsed into a sobbing, spluttering heap. He was afraid, really afraid, and his fear was contagious. I had never seen a grown man cry like that, and it scared me. I'm so sorry, he blubbered. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't. They told me if I went to the police, they'd kill her. Kill who? Aaliyah asked. My daughter, he said, sobbing. They have my daughter. Who? I asked. A shot rang out, startling me. A red stain spread across Sorensen's shirt, and with horror, I realized he'd been shot. His eyes went wide and his mouth open like he was trying to say something, but he was dead before he hit the floor. Before I had time to gasp, Aaliyah grabbed me and yanked me down to the ground. Bullets ripped through the boxes above us. My heart thudded as we scrambled to safety behind the boxes. While Dane returned fire from the protection of a tractor trailer, the other employees, the skeleton crew who'd been loading the trucks, leaped off their forklifts and ran for the exits. I ducked as guns fired, not sure when their bullets were even hitting. Who's shooting at us? I cried. Whoever kidnapped Sorensen's daughter, Aaliyah said. Whoever arranged for those explosives to end up on that truck. She pulled a small gun from the inside of her suit jacket. Bullets tore into the metal wall behind us, pinging like hail on the roof of a car. I wanted to disappear, but Aaliyah popped up from behind the boxes and squeezed off a couple of shots. She dropped back down and put a finger to her ear. Jimmy, we're under attack. I know, came his response. I was watching the parking lot security cameras. These guys didn't drive up. They were already here. Bullets pinged off the tractor trailer where Dane was hiding, and I flinched. They're going to set off the explosives, I said. Aaliyah stood, fired, and ducked again. Plastic explosives don't work that way. It takes a blasting cap. She put her finger to her ear again. Dane, I make 6 hostiles, body armor, and automatic rifles along the south wall. Maybe more. Roger that, Dane's voice said in my ear. 4 more are making their way around the stacks on the west wall. Bullets chewed up the boxes all around us. Aaliyah returned fire with her pistol, but it was nothing compared to the firepower our attackers had. We can't beat 10 guys, I cried. Jimmy, Aaliyah asked, can you do anything for us? The fire alarm suddenly went off, red lights flashing and sirens shrieking. Great, I said. Anything else? It's all I can do, Jimmy's voice said. Nothing else here is automated. Wait, I hear somebody. They found me. Get out of here, Dane said. You too, Aaliyah. It's our only option. Where? She said. The attackers blocked the way we'd come in, and we're along the wall with the emergency exit, too. Where the trucks come in and out, I said, thinking fast and pulling Aaliyah in that direction. That's how I got out of the DHS building. The boxes right by my head exploded, spraying us with frozen french fries. Aaliyah yanked me back down. Or not, I squeaked. Back exits covered, Aaliyah told Dane. Then we go up, Dane told us. Chapter 59. Up, I said, looking at the roof. There was a skylight there, partially obstructed by the towering stacks of food boxes. Up, Aaliyah said, tucked her pistol back in her jacket and took off her high heels. She stood up for a moment, eyeing them regretfully. Do you know how hard it is to find a good pair of heels? She asked me, then tossed them aside. With a nimble leap, she was up and wiggling over the stack of boxes. She held out a hand to help me up after her. I was still so shaken up by what I had just seen. Sorensen dying, the bullets coming at us. What I forgotten to get flustered by the fact that I was holding Aaliyah's hand. We moved around behind the next stack to give us more cover and kept climbing. The ceiling was one more pallet high. Away, I glanced over the edge. Two black clad, SWAT looking guys were creeping through the stacks, automatic rifles held at the ready. They were going for where we had been, but when they discovered we weren't there anymore, they would be able to sneak up on Dane. I looked around for something to drop on them. Then I realized I was standing on what I needed boxes. Boxes and boxes of frozen food. I pushed at one with my feet, but the boxes were wrapped in thick plastic, like industrial strength plastic wrap. It wouldn't budge. Cameron, Aaliyah whispered. Cameron, come on. I signaled for her to wait and ripped and tore at the plastic wrap. I barely made a dent in it. I wished I had a knife. I managed to yank a V-shaped slit into the plastic wrap at last, put my sneakers to the box at the top, and pushed with all my strength. The box tore free the plastic wrap and tumbled down between the stacks, slamming into the head of one of the black clad guys with a satisfying crunch and knocking him flat on the ground. The other guy flinched, looked up, saw me, and opened fire. My stomach went to my throat, and I scrambled back as bullets shredded the boxes and plastic wrap. The guy below me stopped, shooting long enough to shout out something that sounded like Arabic. I kicked at another box, sending it toppling over the side, and took Aaliyah's outstretched hand. I didn't look back to see if the second box had hit the guy below us. We climbed onto the last pallet, and Aaliyah stood on her toes to reach a skylight. She unlatched the window. It gave a rusty groan as she pushed it open, but there was just enough room for us to slither out. I hefted her up until most of her weight was on the roof, and her feet left my hands. I turned just in time to see a guy in all black body armor stand up behind me. He had just climbed up over the side. We stared at each other for half a second, both of us surprised, and then suddenly there was a gun in his hand. I grabbed for it, twisted, pushing down and away, doing everything Dane had taught me, but the guy was strong, stronger than me. He twisted the gun back toward me, and then bang, it was all over. Chapter 60. I flinched, but the soldier hadn't shot me. Blood trickled from his mouth, and the tension in his arm went slack, and then he was falling into me. I caught his body out of instinct, just as quickly pushed him away, heaving him over the side. I tried to ignore the sound of him hitting the boxes as he fell, and then the thud of his body as it hit the concrete floor. I shook uncontrollably. I had almost been shot, point blank, and I hadn't been able to do anything about it. Dane stood on the stack of pallets straight across the aisle, his pistol in both hands. I looked up at him, still dazed. Move, he said. Dully, I understood that he needed me out of the way, and I moved aside as much as I could. Dane got a running start and leaped across the chasm between the pallets, landing with so much momentum he almost went over the other side. He saw me standing there, blinking like an idiot, and grabbed my arm. Not hard, but rough enough to shake me out of my stupor. You all right? He asked me, his brown eyes finding mine and bringing me back. Yeah, I said, I'm okay. He put his hands on my waist and lifted me to the window like he was picking up a toddler. I grabbed on, pulled myself up, and there was Aaliyah to help me the rest of the way. We both reached down and helped Dane up. We were on the roof of a warehouse in the middle of the night with no one else around but terrorists, who were probably, at that moment, swarming up the pallets and out the exits, meaning to trap us. Now what? I asked. We ran to the edge of the roof. It was too far to jump. We'd break our legs, or worse. The sound of the man hitting the floor from the top of the pallets came back to me suddenly, unbidden. I stepped back, feeling sick. There has to be a ladder down somewhere, Aaliyah said, which they'll be taking up. Dane said behind us. Another black-clad man had hauled himself halfway out the same window we'd crawled out of. Dane shot twice, and the man went limp and slid back through the window. Dane put a finger to his ear. Jimmy, you there? Yeah, Jimmy said. Jimmy, in all the excitement, I'd forgotten about him. Where you at? Dane asked. In the van, in the parking lot, Jimmy said. South wall of the warehouse, Dane said. Now. On it, Jimmy said. We heard tires squeal, and in what seemed like an eternity, but was probably only seconds, the white van was parked right beneath us. You here? Jimmy asked. Dane, where are you? Don't move, Dane said. We're coming to you. Before I could even ask what Dane planned to do, he jumped. He landed with as much grace as he could, slamming into the metal roof of the van and landing on his butt. Holy freak! Jimmy yelled into our ears. What was that? Don't move, Jimmy, Aaliyah said. We're coming down. A little warning would be nice, is all, Jimmy cried. Dane got to his feet, apparently none the worse for having fallen 12 feet under the roof of a van. He signaled to Aaliyah, and she jumped. She half landed, was half caught by Dane, and she slithered down the windshield. Dane waved for me to follow. I looked down, seeing the 20 feet to the ground, not the 12 feet to the top of the van. 12 feet was still a lot of feet to drop, and if I missed, a gunshot behind me made me duck. One of the guys was half out the window, his gun pointed at me. He was struggling to aim and keep his balance, but soon enough he was going to get one of them right enough to shoot me. Come on, Cameron, you can do this, Dane yelled. Your brother jumps out of airplanes. My brother had a parachute, I thought. The soldier fired again, and I jumped. Chapter 61. For a horrifying moment, I was falling, my body numb and weightless, and then Dane's big hands caught me and my feet crashed into the metal roof, my legs crumpling underneath me. Down the windshield, Dane told me before I'd even caught my breath. He rolled off the side of the van while I struggled down the windshield, which is a lot harder to do smoothly than you'd think. Dane pushed me inside the van, and we took off. Bullets hit the back of the van as we peeled out of the parking lot, and I flattened myself against the floor again, praying bullet didn't reach me. The van swerved, the bullets stopped, and we were away. Sirens wailed in the distance. The fire department and Jimmy had set off the alarm. Those guys back there, they'll kill the firefighters, I said. The firemen aren't going to find anyone back there. Dane said, just a really big fire. He pulled a little black box out of his pocket, extended an antenna out the top of it, and pressed buttons on it with both thumbs. I've never been in an earthquake before, or a tornado, or a hurricane, but I have to think that the explosion Dane set off was worse than any of them combined. We were already minutes away at high speed, but the shock wave lifted the van onto two wheels and shook my insides so much I thought I was going to rattle to pieces. Jimmy slammed on the brakes and swerved, and when the van's wheels hit the ground again, and it rocked to a stop, we could see the place that used to be Kendall Food Services. It was now a flaming volcano of fire and ash. Left a little C4 of my own back there, Dane said. Only mine had a detonator. Fire engines roared by. 3, 4, 5. It wouldn't be enough. It would never be enough. And all I could think about is I watched the flames was all those explosions leveling University of Phoenix Stadium during the Super Bowl. That was almost us, Aaliyah said. After those terrorists killed us, they would have blown it up to cover their tracks. Yeah, this small army of terrorists. If you'll remember, Jimmy said from the front seat. You know what this means? We just saved 100,000 people, I said. No, Jimmy said. He turned to look at us. The bright yellow and orange flames of the burning warehouse silhouetted him. It means one of us ratted out the team to the terrorists. One of us is a traitor. Chapter 62. Don't be ridiculous, Aaliyah said. Nobody in this van is a traitor. Oh no? Jimmy shot back. Then tell me why exactly there was a strike team waiting on us back there. We were on the move again, speeding away from the explosion. We couldn't stop, not even to argue. Not until we were far, far away from Nashville and the swarm of government agents that were about to descend on the Kendall Food Services distribution center. Jimmy was driving and the rest of us sat in the back on the benches. They were guarding the C4, Aaliyah said. They were there in case somebody like us did come along. That's all. Dane shook his head. Jimmy's right. There were too many of them. You don't leave 12 armed and armored terrorists in a warehouse to guard hidden boxes of C4. They would be easier to spot than the explosives. And they were lying in wait for us, Jimmy said, because they knew. I'm telling you, man, they knew we were coming. Jimmy's opinion I could discount, but not Dane's. I looked at him, but he just sat there like a statue. And just which one of us do you think told them? Aaliyah said, oh, I don't know, Jimmy said. How about the ex-Green Beret who got drummed out of the service on another honorable discharge and still holds a grudge? Other than honorable discharge, Dane, I knew that if you retired from the military after your full tour of duty, with a good or excellent rating, you got an honorable discharge. If you weren't around long enough and had to leave for something like medical reasons, you got a general discharge. That was still fine. But to get an other than honorable conditions discharge meant you did something wrong and got kicked out of the army. Sometimes something really wrong, like fighting or doing drugs or stealing. It was worse than never joining the military in the first place. It was a black mark on your life you never got rid of. You were ripped of your rank. You lost all your veterans benefits, and it made it way harder to get a job. Had that really happened to Dane? Had he done something bad and been thrown out of the army? I couldn't believe it. Dane was a rock. But if he was so good, why wasn't he a Green Beret anymore? That's right, Jimmy said. You think I didn't hack into all your files before I took this gig? I know everybody's dirty little secrets. The air in the van felt like it had just gotten 10 degrees colder. Dane turned his head as slow as an owl watching a mouse crawl by. Don't, he told Jimmy. What about you? Aaliyah said to Jimmy. You're the one of us who's only in this for the money. Yeah, Jimmy said, which begs the question, why are you really in it? That was very touching story you told back there about loving America and Justin Timberlake. Jimmy looked at me in the rearview mirror. What Aaliyah neglected to mention is that she's Jordanian. That's why she can only be an independent contractor for the CIA. She's not an American citizen. She grew up in the Middle East. She's an Arab princess. I am not a princess, Aaliyah said. Yes, I am distantly related to the Jordanian royal family. Very distantly. But I am doing this for exactly the reasons I told Cameron. I am doing it to make the world better. And just because she's from the Middle East doesn't mean anything, I said, bristling. My mom's from Iran. You think that makes me a traitor too? I don't know, Jimmy said. For all we know, your brother's jerking us all around and you're in on it with him. Like those brothers up in Boston. I scrambled for the front seat. To do what? I didn't know. Punch him, hurt him, strangle him? I was blind with rage. I thought of my classmates, the people in my neighborhood, the media. Right at that moment, Jimmy was a stand in for everybody who'd ever called me a name and thought I was a terrorist just because I was Persian. If I'd done anything to Jimmy, he would have lost control of the van and we'd all have been killed. But Dane held me back. Jimmy's phone beeped in the cup holder beside him. He snatched it up angrily to read a text. It's Mickey, he said. He wants to talk. Pull over somewhere, Dane said. I still struggled in his arms, but we both knew I wasn't going anywhere. Make the call, he told Jimmy. Chapter 63. We all stood apart from each other on the quiet dirt road, each of us breathing out hot jets of air in the cold Tennessee night while Jimmy established a secure connection to Mickey on the hood of the van. I didn't have a coat, so I kept my arms wrapped tight around myself. The cold helped calm me down a little, but I was still mad. I knew I wasn't a traitor, but what about Aaliyah? I hated myself for even wondering. But had she really committed to fighting the good fight after September 11th, or had the way the other students treated her turned her against them and their country? The way the DHS said the same prejudice had turned Darius into a terrorist? And Dane, what had he done to get an other than honorable discharge from the U.S. Army? I got him, Jimmy said at last. We stood close to one another, so Mickey could see us on the computer, but not too close. We're getting reports of a massive explosion just outside Nashville, Mickey said. A 10-alarm fire, but by all accounts. I take it you found something? Dane told him all about the explosives and the force that had been there to intercept us. Mickey whistled. Sounds like a near thing you got out of there. Alive, then, he said. So it's taken care of? It's taken care of, said Dane. Then good work, all of you. It would seem Darius had one last good clue for us, and that the Women's World Cup was just a diversion after all. You saved a lot of lives today. We ought to be celebrating that. I knew everything that we'd done, from the escape in D.C. to the thundering explosion at the warehouse. We all had all been worth it. We were heroes, even if nobody even knew it. But none of us felt like celebrating then, not with a lingering suspicion that one of us had sold the others out. There's only one thing left to do now, Mickey said. Go after Darius. Now that their big double secret plan is busted, they don't need him anymore, I said to my stomach sinking. What if they kill him before we get there? It's a possibility, Mickey said. I'm sorry, Cameron, but that's the truth of it. We just have to hope Insaria still sees some use for him. I doubt the lion will sacrifice such a useful pawn so easily, but he may do it anyway. You should be prepared for everything, either eventually. I nodded, but there was no way I was going to come to grips with the idea of Darius being dead. Not now, and not ever. There were 3 days until the Super Bowl. 3 days until Haydar Ansariya knew for sure that his plans had been foiled, if he didn't know already. 3 days until Darius Smith was expendable. We had to find my brother before then. Mickey told us to call again when we got to Arizona and said his goodbyes. You'll notice he did say anything about the size of the strike force that intercepted us at the warehouse, Jimmy said when the call was finished. So what? I said. So there was only one other person who knew we were going to be at that warehouse tonight and could have tipped off the bad guys, Jimmy said. Mickey Hagan. Chapter 64. Mickey, the traitor? It made no sense. Why would he be in contact with Haydar Ansari? Why would he betray us? The man I knew wouldn't do that, but of course I'd only known Mickey for a couple of months. Yes, he'd arranged for me to break out of the DHS facility, but what if he had some other reason for doing it? What if this was all some elaborate setup to make it look like Darius and I had been in on it all along? I frowned as I climbed back into the van. Maybe Mickey and Ansaria being in contact did make sense. Who better for a terrorist to have on his side than someone inside the halls of the DHS and the CIA? Someone whom nobody listened to, but who had heard everything. Somebody to warn him when the authorities were getting too close. Was that how Haydar Ansariya had stayed 2 steps ahead of the United States at every turn? When it came right down to it, I realized I didn't know anything about Mickey Hagan. Not really. Even the story about his brother might have been made up. For all I knew, he could be sending me, Jimmy, Aaliyah, Dane, all of us into a trap. We rode together in the van, each of us alone with our thoughts. Aaliyah drove, and Jimmy sat up front beside her. Dane and I eventually went to sleep. In the morning, Aaliyah and Jimmy slept while Dane drove, and I sat beside him. Never, I noticed, did three of us sleep while only one of us was awake. I guess we were all too suspicious of each other now, and I hated that. Jimmy saw my unhappiness on my face when we traded places in Oklahoma City. All part of the game, kid, he said with a humorless smile. Chapter 65. 24 hours later, we stopped at a gas station just outside of Albuquerque and stretched our legs. We'd driven all night and into the next afternoon. It was less than 2 days until the Super Bowl, and we were 7 hours away from Phoenix by major roads. But we weren't taking major roads. It was going to take us at least another 11 hours. Jimmy figured taking the back roads that kept us away from the authorities. 11 hours until we could begin our hunt for Darius. I was restless. I wanted to be there already. Dane must have noticed because he offered to work with me on some standing self-defense moves while Jimmy and Aaliyah were inside buying food. He showed me the most vulnerable parts of the body to attack, and we practiced attacking each other in the dusty late afternoon glow of New Mexico. Dane blocked a kick at his knees, and I paused, catching my breath. I couldn't take that gun from that guy in the warehouse. I said, "No," Dane said. "I told you. It's hard to do, and on somebody stronger than you. I would have killed me. He would have killed me," I said, blocking one of Dane's slow motion punches. "You bought yourself time," he said. "Enough time for you to save me," I said. "Thank you." Dane shrugged. "Sometimes it's all about who's got your back." He blocked another one of my attacks, even though I did mine at full strength and full speed at Dane's insistence. He always stopped me. "What about you, Cameron?" Dane asked. "You got my back?" "Of course," I said. "So you weren't the one who ratted us out?" Dane asked. I dropped my fist. "Seriously? Seriously? Your mom is Iranian. Maybe she raised you and your brother to be terrorists." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. From Dane, of all people, my mom raised us to love America. I spat, growing angry. Dane threw a punch and I batted it away. "Darius and I have a code of honor. This code have anything to do with becoming a martyr?" "No," I said. "It's about being strong and brave and helping people. Helping people die at the hands of your terrorist buddies," Dane said. I threw myself at him. Fist pulled back to punch him in the face. Before I could even take a swing, he spun me around, twisted one arm behind my back, and used his other arm to put me in a chokehold. I fought uselessly to get free as he forced me to the ground. "Stop. Calm down," he said quietly in my ear. "Cameron, listen to me. I don't believe you or your brother are terrorists, and I know you didn't sell us out back there." I stopped struggling. "But then why? I've seen you lose your cool before, and I wanted to show you what it gets you. You just made some bad decisions, really bad decisions, because you let your anger blind you. Do you see that?" I was on my knees, an arm pinned painfully back, with an ex-Green Beret about to strangle me. I could see that I had maybe made some bad decisions right then. I nodded, and Dane let me go and helped me to my feet. "You are angry," Dane said. "Angry can be good. It can keep you focused, alive, if you can control it. When it controls you, you're dead. Trust me, I know." He paused, and I saw something more in his usually stone-like face. Was it sadness? Regret? What were you angry about? I asked. "Does it have something to do with your other than honorable discharge?" I regretted it almost as soon as I had said it. Dane's eyes flashed like he might put me back in a headlock and actually choke me, but then the fire went away and he was cool, collected Dane again. "Has everything to do with my other than honorable discharge," he said, and then he told me why. Chapter 66. "You know anything about PTSD?" Dane asked. I nodded. "You couldn't be a part of a military family without knowing about it." PTSD stood for post-traumatic stress disorder. People who'd been in really scary situations got it. Soldiers who'd seen active duties, especially. You might get it even if you weren't physically hurt yourself. Just seeing other people get all shot up and blown up could do it. Once you had PTSD, any kind of stressful situation could set you off. Maybe you'd have flashbacks or nightmares. Maybe you'd lose the ability to connect with people or feel depressed. Or maybe you'd get angry real easily and lash out at people for no reason, hurt people. "Got it good after the Battle of Kiev," Dean said. "The army, they teach you to suck it up. Deal with stuff on your own. Soldiers generally aren't talk it out kind of guys, you know? So when I started to get the shakes, when I started to jump at every explosion, when I started to get angry at every little thing, I didn't tell anybody about it. I chose to self-medicate with pills. I knew how to find the right drugs in the med tent." "They caught you stealing medicine?" I said. Dane shook his head. "I got away with it. Then one day we were on patrol and I was so out of it from the meds I was on that I missed something. Buddy of mine almost got killed. Didn't, but almost. Because I wasn't there, you know. I was there, but I wasn't there in the head. I didn't have my buddy's back. Sometimes it's all about who's got your back," I said, repeating Dane's words back to him. "Exactly, and out there it was life and death, every minute of every day. I didn't care if I flushed my own life down the toilet, but I couldn't be a danger to my team. I will not fail those with whom I serve." It's part of the Special Forces creed. I couldn't let that one slide, so I turned myself in. Dane sat on a bench, his arms on his knees. For my honesty, I was given an other than honorable discharge, just one step above dishonorable discharge, cut loose, sent home, wherever that is for a soldier with no family. I took up residence on a bar stool in a dive bar in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and paid a year's rent, one drink at a time. That's where Mick found me. Mickey Hagan, he needed a man to do a job for him. Told me I was that man, but I had to get cleaned up first. He got me into a rehab therapy. He was the only one to ever give me a second chance. I thought my life was over at 24, but Mick changed all that. I mean, every day is still a challenge. I still get jumpy, tense, angry sometimes, but I control it. It doesn't control me. Dane paused. So tell me about this code you and your brother have, this code of honor. I shrugged. It's just something we made up when we were kids. Dane looked off into the distance. Jimmy calls all this a game. The spy business. It's a sick game if it is one. You play long enough, every part of you that ain't bolted down gets stripped away. Friends, family, idols, they come loose. They fly away, and one day you look down and you're all that's left. You and whatever code you live by. Call it a code of ethics or a code of honor or whatever. It's who you are inside. It's how you live your life. How you, Cameron Smith, are going to deal with everything the game throws at you today, tomorrow, and the rest of your life. If you really do have a code, you hang on to it. You lock it up tight, deep inside, and you live by it. Because in the end, it's all you're really ever going to have. Chapter 67. A blue road sign said, "The Grand Canyon State welcomes you." As we cross the border from New Mexico, on the sign were the star and sunbursts of the Arizona state flag, the yellow and orange colors matching the sky as the sun rose behind us. It was cool in the van, but not cold. The temperature was supposed to hit 75 degrees today. Late January in Arizona, I was glad to be back. The warmer weather as we driven was best west made me feel like I was coming out of hibernation. I was ready to wake up. It took us another 4 hours to get to Apache Junction on the outskirts of Phoenix, but we used the time to talk strategy. Show 'em the map, Dane said from the driver's seat. Jimmy called up a detailed 3D map of the Tonto National Forest on his laptop. "Here's the mountain you think you saw in the video," Jimmy said. "I know I saw," I corrected him. "Superstition Mountain." All right, Jimmy said, not wanting a fight. I took still shots from the video and ran them through a graphic plotter. On the screen, the image of the silhouetted mountain I'd seen in the video appeared, and then a 3D map materialized on top of it, spun, reorientated itself on the horizon line, and settled in along the same contours of the shadowy mountain. If this is the same mountain, this is where it was seen from. The map swept down and away from us, the mountain growing smaller but more defined in the background, and there was red pin struck in the map and a small valley in the foothills. Jimmy clicked a button and a pie-shaped wedge of a lighter color stretched out from the mountain to the foreground, encompassing the little red pin. "Best I can calculate based on the angle and location of the mountain compared to the sun," he said. "The video was shot somewhere in this region. I figured their camp can't be too far away." "There are caves in these mountains," I said. "That's where I'd be hiding if it were me." "Right," Jimmy said, "if it were you." He was back to the trader business again, like I was leading them into a trap. I was about to tell him again that I wasn't the one to betray us, but Dane interrupted. "Enough, Jimmy. We need to get up into those mountains. But we can't take the van. There are no roads, not near enough." "We can go on horseback," I said. "It's easiest that way. I know where we can get some. I didn't take them to the horse ranch where my mom worked. They would recognize me there. But there was another horse ranch I knew about a few miles away. I waited in the van with Jimmy while Dane and Aaliyah went inside to arrange a ride. "I'm not a traitor," I told Jimmy. He was packing electronic equipment to a backpack to take with him. "I didn't betray us. I wouldn't do that." "So you say," Jimmy said. I felt myself getting mad again. "I wouldn't." "Look, kid," Jimmy said, "for what it's worth, I don't think it's you, but somebody ratted us out back there in Nashville, and I know it wasn't me. That doesn't leave a whole lot of suspects. No, I thought, it leaves Dane and Aaliyah and Mickey. Just watch your back out there, is all I'm saying," Jimmy's told me. He zipped up his backpack as Dane opened the sliding door. "We're good to go," Dane said. "Tell Mickey we're going in." "You sure I should?" Jimmy said. Dane gave him a tired look. "Do it," he said. "Then saddle up, cowboys. It's time to ride." Chapter 68. "Wow, I think I can see my house from here," I said. We were crouching low on the mesa that had a commanding view of the canyons all around. The sky was high and cloudless and azure blue, and the desert air felt warm and dry on my skin. Saguaro cacti, the kind with the tall tree-like trunks and the arms that curved up like a ref signaling a touchdown, dotted the rocky foothills of the Superstition Mountains ahead of us. In the other direction, through the afternoon haze, we could see the urban sprawl of Phoenix, and right beside us, tied up and gagged among the desert sand of Urbana, the horses were nibbling on, lay the guard Dane had taken out. The guard who'd been waiting to shoot us with a sniper rifle as we trotted on horseback along the trail into the canyon. Dane had caught the hint of a boot print and told us to wait in one of the little caves that littered the park while he investigated. Aaliyah whistled now as she checked out the sniper's guns. IDF M24 SWS with a loopholed scope and bipod. She said, "You know your guns," said Dane. "You mean that guy could have shot us coming up over that right ridge?" Jimmy said, "If he was any good, he could have shot us 2 ridges ago. This time, thing's got a range of 800 meters," Dane said. My stomach twisted into a knot. I could have been killed before I even knew what hit me. Dane had saved my life, saved all of our lives, again. But the sniper even being here meant there was a good chance that Darius and Hadar Ansariya might really be hiding out somewhere in the park. The rest of the guards' gear sat on a dusty woven blanket spread out onto the top of the ridge. A pair of binoculars, a canteen, a walkie-talkie, and 2 long duffel bags. Aaliyah unzipped one of the bags. "Oh, he's got an Israeli-made 9mm submachine gun," Aaliyah said, pulling out the gun. It was a small black Uzi, the kind of compact single-hand machine gun bad guys are always using in the movies and on TV. "There's more ammo in here, too," Aaliyah said. "Take it and the gun both," Dane said. He looked down at the unconscious sniper. Dane had tied and wound up bandana around the man's mouth so he couldn't yell when he came to. "We won't have much time now," Dane said. "When he doesn't report in soon, they'll know something's wrong. Why don't we ask him where they are?" I asked. We had just a day and a half until the Super Bowl. I knew the deadline didn't mean much. Hidar Ansari had no doubt already heard that we'd uncovered his plot to ship explosives to Phoenix in food trucks. He'd probably long since decided what to do with Darius, but to me the Super Bowl marked a sort of last gasp moment, the last chance to save Darius before the lion devoured him. We didn't have any time to waste wandering around the national forest hoping we'd find some hidden cave. "He won't talk," Jimmy said, nudging the unconscious guy with the toe of his sneaker. "If he does, he'll just give us the runaround." Dane turned the long sniper rifle around and set it on the ground, pointing the other way. He stretched out behind it, sighting through the scope. "We don't need to ask him," he said. He rolled out of the way for the Aaliyah to take a look. "Cave, far side of the next canyon." Jimmy snatched up the binoculars to look, then handed them to me. The cave was a dark slit in the grimacing mouth in the base of the mesa. There were no people in sight, but with a little focus, I could make out tire tracks in the dirt around it, ATV tracks. I'd been right all along. Hadar Ansari was in America, here in my own backyard, and if Darius was still alive, he was right there inside that cave with him. Chapter 69. Aaliyah swung the Uzi around at the sound of footsteps, but it was only Dane. He slid down behind the clump of verbena, where we were hiding. It was getting on toward late afternoon, but there still hadn't been any signs of life from the slit-like entrance to the terrace cave. "I took care of the rest of the snipers," he whispered. "How many more were there?" Aaliyah asked. "3. 2 more watching away, but 1 watching the cave. If we had just gone right for the entrance, the sniper could have taken us out before we'd ever set foot inside." "Are you sure there aren't more?" I asked. "No," Dane said. "Very reassuring," Jimmy said. "There's very little in this life anyone can really be sure of," Dane said. Like whether or not Dane was a traitor, or Jimmy, or Aaliyah, or Mickey had the same person tipped the terrorists off that we were about to storm their cave. Dane handed me a pistol, and Jimmy and Uzi like Aaliyah's taken, no doubt, from the other snipers he'd subdued. Dane kept another small machine gun for himself. Jimmy looked impressed as his new firepower, sliding the bolt back and letting it go with a practiced click. I felt distinctively inexperienced and outclassed, holding my little handgun. "You tell Mick we're going in?" Dane asked Jimmy. "Message sent," Jimmy confirmed. "All right. Stay close to the ATV tracks and the footpaths," Dane told us. "They might have mined the other approaches." Mines? As if carrying a gun wasn't scary enough, now I'd be sweating over every step I took. Unless the plan was to leave me out here, which I was not going to let happen. "I'm going with you," I told Dane. "I won't let you leave me behind." "Never considered it," Dane said. "There's only 4 of us, and who knows how many of them. We need every hand on deck, and I'll want you there when we find your brother." I was stunned. I had expected to have to argue, but no argument was necessary. I was in, and now that I was in, I was scared all over again. "There will probably be guards just inside the cave," Aaliyah said. She sketched a rough picture of the cave opening in the orange dirt and marked X's where the guards would be hiding. "Here in the shadows. You won't see them before they see you." "Want to bet?" Dane said. "Stay here, everybody," he added, I suppose for my benefit. I'll signal when I taken out the guards. Dane slithered off through the scrub brush, and I stared at the gun in my hands, thinking about what was about to happen. My heart thumped wildly in my chest. Aaliyah put a hand on my shoulder. You're going to be all right, Cameron. Just stay behind Dane and follow his lead. Only don't shoot him from behind, Jimmy said. Or us. I closed my eyes. I did not want to accidentally shoot Dane, Jimmy, or Aaliyah, and if my experience in the DHS mailroom was any indication, I was more likely to hit one of them than a terrorist if I pulled the trigger. Watch my back. Watch my step. Watch out for friendly fire. I was going to be so busy watching out for things, I would be frozen stiff. Aaliyah could see my hesitation. Cameron, you need to answer something for yourself right now, she said. Could you shoot him if you had to? Shoot who? I asked. Your brother Darius, she said. I was shocked. Shoot Darius? No, of course not. I won't have to. He's not a traitor. Aaliyah and Jimmy exchanged a look. Before we could say anything more, Dane whistled from below. The signal. The guards were taken care of. It was time to go into the cave. Chapter 70. The 2 sentries Aaliyah had predicted would be guarding the entrance were unconscious, and Dane was just finishing hog tying them with plastic cables. He nodded toward a little camera up on the cave wall, and Jimmy ran over with his computer. Dane stood and held out his hands, and Aaliyah tossed him the duffel bag filled with explosives she'd brought along when we left the van. They worked quickly and quietly, like a well-designed play from a scrimmage, weaving in and out and around each other. I stood on the sidelines watching, simultaneously hoping and dreading that the coach would put me in the game. There were 3 four-wheeled ATVs just inside the cave entrance in the shadows where they couldn't be seen from outside. Dane taped the duffel bag full of explosives onto the handlebars of the ATV with duct tape and pointed it straight back into the cave. Then he duct taped the throttle so that when he turned the thing on, it would shoot forward. Cameras looped, Jimmy whispered. He fished in the backpack he'd brought with him and handed out night vision goggles we could still see here in the mouth of the cave, where the light filtered in. But soon we'd be deep in the cave, and the plan was to knock out their lights so we'd have the upper hand. I pulled on the night vision goggles, but kept them on my forehead. Lights out in 3, 2, 1, Jimmy said. He pushed a button on a handheld controller, and the lights just beyond the cave entrance shorted out. Someone shouted an alarm. Farther in the cave, Dane started the ATV and threw it into gear. The front end came up off the ground in a wheelie and almost flipped backward, but it bounced back down and zoomed off into the darkness of the cave. Wait, I said, what about Darius? Down, Dane told us. I hit the rocky floor of the cave as the explosives went off. People screamed and a rock and dust fell from the ceiling. I struggled to pick myself up, still shaking from the blast. Darius, what if the blast had killed him? He'll be deeper inside the cave, Aaliyah told me. Dane was already on his feet and disappearing into the darkness. Gunshots rang out into the darkness. More screams. Aaliyah flipped down her night vision goggles and ran in after him, her Uzi at the ready. I stared at the darkness, afraid to go in. Some soldier I was turning out to be. I tried to think of our code of honor. Be the strongest of the strong. I told myself, be the bravest of the brave. More gunshots rang out, an automatic rifle, and I flinched. Jimmy clapped me on the shoulder, scaring the bejesus out of me. You only live once, right? He said, pulling me in with him. Yeah, I thought that's what I'm worried about. Chapter 71. We passed the smoking, burning remains of the ATV, stepping over dead bodies. None of them were Dane or Aaliyah, I was relieved to see, or Darius. We found Dane and Aaliyah a little farther in the hunkered down behind a barricade of crates. Machine gun fire tore into the wooden boxes, showering the cave with splinters. The cave turns left just beyond here, Dane told us over the gunfire. That's where they're shooting from. 2 of them. We need to move on them before reinforcements get here. Al-Qaeda likes to leave bullet holes in corners, Elias told us. That way one man can hide there with a good view in both directions. I'll bet there's a bullet hole somewhere between here and there. Dane nodded. Aaliyah and I will go in. Jimmy, you and Cameron hold back and watch for somebody to come in behind us. I gripped the butt of my gun. It was slick and sweaty in my hands. Dane pulled a grenade from the utility belt he wore, pulled a pin, and chucked it. Seconds later, the cave resounded with a thudding boom, and the area was filled with smoke. Even with the night vision goggles on, it was impossible to see what was just ahead of us. Dane charged ahead anyway, Uzi firing. Aaliyah ran after him. Jimmy stood and I did too, trying to see through the smoke. I don't see anybody, I said. I don't see anything, Jimmy said. The night vision goggles turned everything green, and the smoke was a big green-black blob floating in the air. It might as well have been another wall for all we could see through it. I thought I heard the scrape of metal on metal like a heavy door being opened or a bolt being thrown. Something's coming out, I said. Where? I don't know. I can hear it, but I can't see it. Jimmy swore under his breath, and then he surprised me. He ran into the wall of smoke and disappeared. Seconds passed, and then a single gunshot rang out. I raised my gun, my hand shaking. The black smoke still clouded my night vision goggles. Jimmy, I called. Jimmy. No answer. Had he killed the man in the bullet hole, or had the terrorist killed him? If Jimmy was dead, the terrorist would be sneaking up behind Dane and Aaliyah. He would shoot them from behind. Be the strongest of the strong, be the bravest of the brave, I reminded myself. Help the helpless. Dane and Aaliyah weren't exactly helpless, but they didn't know what was coming, and that was close enough. I took a deep breath and stepped out from behind the shattered crates. I was going to have to go into the darkness alone. Chapter 72. Darkness swirled around me as I inched my way farther into the cave. I sucked in a big lungful of smoke, and it burned my nose and throat. I swallowed hard, trying not to cough and give myself away, and reminded myself to keep my mouth closed from now on. Eyes watering inside my night vision goggles, I slid my feet forward like I was crossing a room in the dark, trying not to whack my shins on the furniture. But it wasn't really furniture I was worried about. Any second now, I expected terrorists to come screaming out of the darkness and attack me. I was so scared I could barely summon the courage to keep moving. But I must keep repeating my code of honor like a mantra. Be the strongest of the strong, be the bravest of the brave, help the helpless, always tell the truth. The truth was, all I wanted to do was turn and run back out of the cave. So the safety and security of daylight, I didn't want to get shot and I didn't want to die. Watching soldiers do this in movies was always cool. You always saw the bad guys coming. And when the heroes shot the bad guys, they dropped like bowling pins. This was messy, scary, dark. I inched forward. The smoke was clearing. The cave began to take shape again. I saw a body sprawled out on the floor. I hurried toward it, afraid it was Jimmy, but it was a terrorist wearing all black body armor like the team back at the warehouse. I heard a grunt and I hurried on, my fear replaced by the urgent need to help. Be loyal, I told myself, never give up. Then I saw Jimmy. He was wrestling with a second man in black, trying to keep the terrorist from lowering his gun enough to shoot him. Jimmy's gun was on the ground beside him. Little help, Jimmy called. I raised my pistol to shoot the terrorists, but they were struggling so much I was afraid if I pulled the trigger I'd hit Jimmy. Visions of missing the bright red fire extinguisher filled my head. I ran at the man instead and brought the butt of the gun down on his head. In the movies, they always sent bad guys crashing to the ground, but this wasn't a movie. The butt of my gun bounced right off the helmet he wore, and he didn't go down. He did turn, though, surprised, and Jimmy was able to wrench the man's rifle away. The terrorist kneed Jimmy in the stomach, and Jimmy went down, moaning in pain. The terrorist spun on me and raised my gun. I raised my gun to shoot, but I didn't. I couldn't. I took a step back, and the terrorist understood at once. He lunged for me, grabbing the gun. We struggled, and the gun went flying. I kicked him in the shin, trying to remember what Dane had taught me. The terrorist ripped my night vision goggles away. The sun changed from green light to no light was disorienting, and my punch at his neck missed entirely. He hit me in the chest, and I staggered back, slamming into the rock wall. I put my hands up, expecting another blow, but all that came was the sound of him choking. As my eyes adjusted, I saw a big shape behind him. Dane, the ex-Green Beret, had his arm around the terrorist's neck, and as my attacker passed out, Dane lowered him to the floor. Dane picked up my fallen pistol and handed it back to me. You know, at some point, you're actually going to have to shoot somebody with that thing, he told me. A shot exploded right behind us, making even Dane flinch, and another terrorist fell face first to the floor. He'd been sneaking up on Dane with a knife. Jimmy was still on the floor, his Uzi in his hand. You're welcome, Jimmy said. Dane gave Jimmy his hand to help him up. Come on, we found a locked door. We think Darius is inside. Darius, my fear and disorientation were immediately replaced with a desperate hope. Aaliyah stood against the wall beside the door, her Uzi at the ready in case anyone came at her out of the darkness. She tensed as we came running around the corner, swinging her weapon up at us, but she quickly lowered it when she saw who it was. Jimmy, the door, Dane said. The hacker dropped to a knee in front of the metal door, pulled a lockpick set out of the backpack, and went to work. While he worked, we examined the room. Half a dozen bodies littered the floor, and 2 folding tables along a side wall held bullet-ridden laptops and TV monitors. Along another wall were stacked plastic bins and wooden crates. Food, water, guns, gear, Aaliyah said, going through them, but no explosives. Maybe that's what's behind this door. Not Darius, Jimmy said. Something in the door clicked, and Jimmy stood back. We're about to find out. Chapter 73. Jimmy, Cameron behind the door. Aaliyah, take the wall. Dane said he clearly meant to be the one to stand in the doorway and face whatever was behind there first. None of us argued with him. When everyone was in position, he nodded to Jimmy. Jimmy threw open the door, and I ducked, waiting for the bullets to fly, but there was nothing. Hands on your head, Dane yelled into the room. Hands on your head, and don't move. Dane went inside, his weapon held high at eye level. Cameron, Dane called, you better get in here. My heart stopped. I came around the door and hurried inside. The small rock-walled room was lit by a hanging kerosene lamp. Standing right below it, his back to a small wooden table, his hands on his head, was my brother Darius. Darius looked like he had in the videos, but it still blew my mind to see him like this in real life. completely different from the Darius I had grown up with. He was still young and strong, but he was scrawnier, dirtier. He had a woolly black beard that swallowed his face, and his hair was long and stringy. He looked like a crazy old hermit. No, I realized he looked like Rostam. He looks like the drawings of the ancient Persian hero in our storybooks. I felt a lump in my throat. Darius lowered his arms. Cameron, he said, his voice coming out in a croak. Darius, I said, I didn't think I would. I just threw myself at my brother. We hugged. He was alive. Darius was alive and here. I had really found him. Darius held me at arm's length to look at me, tears in his eyes. Cameron, what are you doing here? I came to rescue you. I looked around at Dane and Jimmy, who'd followed me into the room. Aaliyah must have still been outside. We all did. Darius shook his head. You shouldn't have come, Cameron. I'm so sorry. Why? I said. Before I could even blink, Darius had the gun out of my hand and pointed it at me. Chapter 74. I stared stupidly down the barrel of the gun. Darius, what are you doing? I said. Put the gun down, Dane yelled, pointing his weapon at my brother. Put it down. Darius spun me around and pulled me close, holding the cold gun to my head. I couldn't believe what was happening. No, my brother was not a terrorist. Suddenly, everybody in the room was screaming and pointing guns at each other. Put the gun down. Step away from Cameron. Get back. Let him go. I'll do it. Dane inched forward and Darius pushed the gun harder into the side of my head. No, don't stop, I yelled. A gun fired, and I flinched, terrified suddenly that Dane had shot Darius, but Darius was still beside me, holding the gun against my head. Dane was the one who slumped to the floor, blood running from a hole in his forehead. No, I screamed. I tried to tear myself away from the Darius, but he held me tight. I didn't understand. Darius hadn't shot him, so who had? Jimmy? No, standing in the doorway was a woman wearing a black full-body robe with only her eyes showing. She had a pistol in her hand pointed at Dane's body. She was the one who'd shot him. A woman who was the same size and build as Aaliyah. No, it couldn't be. Was it her? Was Aaliyah the traitor after all? Aaliyah hadn't come into the room with us, and she wasn't here now, unless she was the woman underneath the robe. More masked terrorists came into the room and took Jimmy's gun away from him. I jumped as a woman shot Dane again and again in the back to make sure he was dead. Aaliyah, I said through my tears. I hadn't even realized I was crying. Aaliyah, is that you? The woman pointed her pistol at me. You were expecting the lion, perhaps? Haidar Ansari, she said. It wasn't Aaliyah's voice, I realized at once, relieved, but it still was familiar. I knew I heard it somewhere before, but it was masked by the veil she wore. I tried to keep her talking to hear more. Where is he? I asked. Haidar Ansari is dead, she told me. You killed him. Me? I didn't kill anybody, I said. I hadn't even fired my pistol. Your government did, the woman said darkly. 3 years ago in a drone strike. I remembered now. Back in the motel room, Aaliyah had said the government was sure they'd killed Ansari in a drone strike. I guess they really had. Somebody had just been pretending to be him ever since then, plotting terrorist strikes against the United States in his name. The United States government killed Haidar Ansari, which means you did it, the woman said. How does your constitution begin? We the people? As far as I am concerned, any man, woman, or child who calls themselves American is responsible for what their government does, which means every one of you killed him. I kept my eyes on her, trying to figure out who was under the robe and veil. Her voice was so familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. Couldn't be sure. How could I be sure of anything when Darius held a gun to my head? My brother Darius. Darius the terrorist. I struggled in Darius's grip, but he held me tight. But why pretend to be Haidar Ansari if he's dead? I asked the woman. Why did any of this unless... Then I remembered something from Ansari's file. The wife he had in Syria? What if she hadn't hated her husband for becoming a terrorist? What if that's why she'd married him in the first place? Unless you're Bashira Ansaria, I said. Haidar Ansaria's wife, I prefer, said Bashira Ansaria, the Black Widow. Chapter 75. They put me in the little bolt hole in the corner, the one Jimmy and I had been assigned to watch. I didn't know where they put Jimmy, or if he was still alive. I didn't see him again after Bashira Ansaria killed Dane. I couldn't believe he was gone, dead. Even though a part of me ached with grief, the part of me wounded by Darius's betrayal hurt worse. I felt like there was an empty hole the size of that cave where my heart used to be. I was so shocked, so blown away by everything that I hadn't even been able to cry. I was like one of those people who see on the side of the road after a massive car wreck, sitting there staring off into space, distant, detached, disconnected. All those interrogations back at the DHS building in Washington must have been right about 9/11 turning Darius against his friends, his neighbors, his family, his country. about America being the big white demon and him vowing to kill all monsters. All these years, and I'd never really known my brother at all. So it wasn't me and Darius against the world anymore. And now I didn't have Dane either. Jimmy and Aaliyah were out of it too. They were captured or dead. Our only hope was Mickey Hagan. Unless he was a traitor, at this point anything seemed possible, which meant it was down to me. Me and our code of honor. My code of honor, because whatever code Darius was living by now, it wasn't the same as mine. There was a light knock on the big metal door to my cell, so soft I almost didn't hear it. Then the big metal bolt on the door slid open slowly, quietly. I stood. I had no idea what was coming next, what the Black Widow had in mind for me. But whatever it was, I didn't want to take it sitting down. The door cracked open, and Darius slid inside holding a gun. I put my hands up in a mock surrender. You got me, I told my brother, the traitor. You got me good, Darius. Cut it out, Cameron, Darius said. He took a step toward me, and that's when I struck. I did everything Dane had taught me. I stepped to the side, grabbed for the gun, pushed down and away. I used all that pent-up anger inside me, and the pistol came free in my hand. Before Darius could react, I had it pointed back at him. Cameron! Don't, I said, my voice low and mean. We had a code, Darius, you and me. Be the strongest of the strong, the bravest of the brave, help the helpless, always tell the truth, be loyal, never give up. I pointed the barrel of the gun straight at Darius's forehead. My hand shook, but I managed to keep the gun steady. Kill all monsters. Darius realized I was deadly serious and put his hands up. Cameron, don't, he said quickly. I believe in the code, too. I always have. I'm not a monster. Really? I said. I believed in you, Darius. When nobody else would, I fought for you. I came to rescue you. And then you betrayed me. The tears came now. The tears. I hadn't cried alone in the dark. The world was just me and Darius now. Me and the brother I'd loved, emulated, worshipped. The brother who'd taken my affection for him and twisted it, used it, crushed it, under his boot. Now that Darius and I were alone together, every emotion I'd kept dammed up inside me came flooding out at once. Anguish, fear, pain. Even as I cried, I kept the gun trained on Darius. Could you shoot your brother if you have to? Aaliyah had asked me. Of course not, I told her. I won't have to. He's not a traitor. But he was. I pressed the gun against Darius's forehead and curled my finger around the trigger. Chapter 76. Cameron, please, wait. It was all a trick, Darius said. I'm not a traitor. You have to listen to me. It was all a trick. I blinked through my tears. I thought my heart had been torn out before, but no. There was enough of it still left that Darius's words stuck in my chest like a dagger. Why did he keep lying to me? You're not a traitor, I said through my tears. Then explain to me why I'm trapped here in this cell and you're not. Explain to me why Dane, a real American soldier, is dead and you're not. Cameron, I got captured in Afghanistan, Darius said, quick and quiet. I am going to escape or die trying. But then I heard them planning attacks on U.S. targets. Big attacks, and I realized I could do more good alive than dead. I knew if I could just convince them I was on their side, I could get word back to America about their plans. Word back to you. His eyes widened as he looked right at me. And it worked, Cameron. You got my messages. No, I said, refusing to be tricked again. You used me. You used me to distract the government from the real target. They said you'd hated America since 9/11. That you went to Washington when you were in high school to scout for Al-Qaeda. That you joined the Rangers and went to Afghanistan so you could join Al-Qaeda and train them to attack America. No, Darius said. He looked shocked. I was fighting Al-Qaeda, Cameron. I still am. God, if you knew how hard it was for me to say those awful words on camera, to just stand there while they beheaded the poor journalist, how much I wanted to jump in there and try to stop them. But you got my messages. You knew what I was saying. Wasn't I right about the museum, the Women's World Cup, the Super Bowl? We saved lives, Cameron, together, you and me. You have to trust me now. I was starting to doubt myself. I had been on such a roller coaster, believing Darius, not believing him again. I was so confused, so mad. I can't, I told him, I can't. I steadied the gun against his temple. Cameron, Darius said, Cameron, wait, don't. Please. I'm sorry. I know this hasn't been easy for you, but I always knew that if there was one person who would never stop believing in me, it was you. Tears streamed down my face. I didn't know what to think. I'm sorry about grabbing you and holding you at gunpoint, Darius went on, his own eyes filling with tears. I was afraid if I didn't, somebody else would shoot you. I shook my head, trying to deny what he was saying, but deep down, I still wanted to believe. And I'm sorry about the soldier, the man who died, Darius sagged. Cameron, you've got to believe me. I came here just now to break you out. I know where they're hiding the woman who came with. We can get her too, and then we can get out of here. Aaliyah, she's okay? What about Jimmy? The guy with the numbers tattooed all over him, he's gone. The Black Widow gave him a suitcase full of money and he left. My mind reeled. She gave him money? To Jimmy? I didn't understand. The only reason Bashira and Saria would pay Jimmy was because Jimmy was a traitor. Suddenly, it all fit. Jimmy could have sent information about us to the Black Widow the whole time on his computer, and we'd never have known it. And he hadn't been with us in the warehouse in Nashville when we were attacked. He'd come to our rescue, but he'd had to. That what if he'd left us to die and we'd survived? We would have known he was a traitor, and then Mickey Hagan would have had the DHS and the CIA and the FBI on his tail. And if we did escape, he'd want to be with us so he could keep selling our secrets to Bashira Ansari. But if Jimmy was a traitor, why had he tried to protect Dane in the cave? Was it some shred of loyalty after all? I guess it was all part of the game, as Jimmy liked to say. If Jimmy really was the traitor, I realized in horror that meant he had never sent a message to Mickey Hagan letting him know we were going into the cave. The CIA had no idea where we were or what we were doing. Nobody was coming to save us. Cameron, we have to move, Darius said, and I still have the gun pointed at him, lost in thought. We're in Arizona, aren't we? In the Tonto National Forest somewhere? We can get out of here and go straight to the authorities. Catch those terrorists once and for all. But we have to hurry. He stepped away. Don't, I told him, aiming the gun again. Darius lowered his hands in defeat. Cameron, if you don't believe me, if you think all that stuff about me being a terrorist is true, then you should just shoot me right now. Darius said, otherwise I'm going to free that woman you came with and get out of here. Darius opened the door and backed out into the corridor. Darius, no, I said, and I pulled the trigger. Chapter 77. The pistol sounded like a thunderclap in the small space. Darius flinched. The terrorist, raising an automatic rifle behind him, fell down dead. Darius turned at the sound of the man hitting the ground, then looked back at me, stunned. Cameron, I thought you'd really shot me. When it came down to it, I couldn't do it. Whether Darius really was a terrorist or not, I could never kill my brother. I knew I'd always have an Achilles heel when it came to Darius, the same way Mickey Hagan had for his brother. I stared down at the man I'd shot. He'd been raising his rifle at Darius like he was going to shoot him, so I'd shot first. You know, at some point you're actually going to have to shoot somebody with that thing. Dane had told me, and now I had killed a man. When I had applied to West Point, I figured this might be happen someday, far in the future. You go to West Point to become a soldier, and I knew what soldiers did. I just hadn't known what it would feel like to be responsible for another man's death. It left me hollow and cold inside, like I'd died a little too. Darius picked up the dead terrorist's automatic rifle. He saw me shaking, staring in shock and horror at the dead man, and he put his hand on my shoulder. Cameron, you've got to put it away right now. You've got to deal with it later. Understand? I don't know how many of them are left, but somebody had to hear that gunshot. We have to move. I nodded dully and let Darius lead me along. I still didn't know if he was a traitor or not, if he was taking me to the right Black Widow, but I didn't care anymore. My life was his to protect or throw away. I couldn't hurt my own brother, even if he could. Darius led me farther back into the cave. I thought it was strange. We never ran into another guard, but I didn't have much time to think about it. In less than a minute, Darius stopped in front of another bolt hole. Here, hold this, he said, handing me his automatic rifle. I held it and the pistol awkwardly while he pulled the bolt on the door free. I saw them put your friend in here. Darius pulled the door open. Elias sat bound and gagged in a chair in the center of the room. I felt a rush of relief. Darius hadn't been lying after all. I hurried to untie her, but Elias' wide eyes and shaking head made me stop. Automatic rifles cocked behind me, and I turned. The veiled Black Widow and 5 of her soldiers stood in the doorway, pointing guns right at us. Chapter 78. One of the Black Widow's men took the guns from me. Cameron, I didn't know, I swear, Darius said. He moved like he was going to try and fight his way out of the little cell, but one of the terrorists pointed a gun at his face. It's quite true, the Black Widow said. Darius is more a dupe than you are. I've known all along he was faking his allegiance to us. Ever since he was captured in Afghanistan, he was so eager to join our ranks, too eager. We were just going to use him in a terrorist attack at first, sacrifice him to the cause. Then it became convenient to use him to feed false information to the United States government. We have you to thank for that, too, Cameron Smith. That voice, even muffled by her veil, I knew it from somewhere, but how and where? But it wasn't false information, Darius argued, sounding firm, even with the gun trained on him. Everything was true. The museum, the Women's World Cup, the Super Bowl, and the U.S. government stopped them all. Yes, they did, the Black Widow said, and now that they are confident the threat has been neutralized twice over, they will let down their guard. We let you hear only what we wanted you to hear. The rest is still proceeding exactly as we wish it to. False clues and misdirection, just like your husband was famous for, I said. You still plan to attack, don't you? But of course, said the Black Widow. Where? When? What are you planning? Darius demanded. Don't worry, Darius. You and your brother will have a front row seat, the Black Widow assured him. An angry nation will have to have someone to blame. Why not 2 young Iranian boys? The Widow's men pushed forward to grab Darius, and I fought back, but there were too many of them, leaving us to too little room. The butt of a rifle cracked against my skull, and everything went black. Chapter 79. I woke up in the dark. I was groggy, my head thumped. Boom, boom, cha, boom, boom, cha. I was lying on my side, my hands tied behind my back, my feet were bound too, my eyes fluttered, threatening to close and take me back to sleep again, but the thundering wouldn't stop. Boom, boom, cha, boom, boom, cha. My mouth was dry. I tried to lick my lips and found a cloth tied across my mouth. I was gagged and bound. Boom, boom, cha, boom, boom, cha. I was gagged and bound, and I needed to know why. Where I was, I fought to stay awake, letting my panic fill me. The adrenaline pushed away the grogginess, and as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I saw that I was in a low room. No room wasn't right. A box, a coffin, but that wasn't right either. It was too wide to be either one. I felt like I was under the bleachers in the gym, but at school. There was wood just above me and just below me, and inside, where I was, there were metal struts everywhere. And plastic explosives. Boom, boom, cha, boom, boom, cha. Explosives, C4, the same stuff we'd found at the warehouse in Nashville, and lots more of it, too. Boom, boom, cha, boom, boom, cha. I felt a hand grab mine, and I gave a start. I thought I was alone. I couldn't see behind me, so I rolled over, thudding in the plastic explosives. I winced, waiting for the boom, then remembering that it took a massive explosion to set off a plastic explosives. Either that or one tiny electric blasting cap. I inched back to where I was and saw who'd reached out to touch me. It was Darius. He was bound and gagged too, and just like me, he'd rolled over to see who was behind him. His eyes were wide with panic. Wherever we were, whatever this was, the Black Widow had made good on her promise. We were right in the middle of something that was meant to go boom. We were going to be sacrificed and blamed all at the same time. The thundering sound shifted to a rising roar like a wave crashing into the shore. I realized for the first time that the thudding sound wasn't in my head. The floor vibrated as the sound washed over us, and something blew like a foghorn or a basketball buzzer. Words came floating toward us, pieces of sentences, big, deep words, magnified by stadium speakers. 2-minute warning, halftime show. Darius and I locked eyes in the same moment. We both knew where we were. We were at the Super Bowl. The thing we were inside jerked, rumbled, and started to move, and then I understood. We were inside a giant stage, one of those enormous platforms they wheel out during the Super Bowl halftime, and we were the halftime show. Chapter 80. Darius' expression told me that he understood the same thing. We were underneath a stage rigged with enough C4 to blow a crater in the football field at University of Phoenix Stadium, killing untold numbers of people in the stands, and we were already moving. I struggled against the ropes that bound me, trying to get free. I could see Darius trying to do the same thing, but I could barely feel my fingers. The ropes were so tight. Music boomed through the stadium. The new Beyonce song. I thought randomly of all the things to think about when you were tied up and strapped to a pile of plastic explosives. Another horn sounded and the halftime float rumbled to a stop. Of course, that was just a 2-minute warning. We had 2 minutes of clock time. Lots more if they kept running the ball out of bounds and took 1,000 commercial breaks like they usually do during the Super Bowl. That would buy us 10, 15 minutes tops, but as little as 2 minutes if they stayed in bounds and called no timeouts. We had to get out of here. I could see in Darius's eyes that he thought of something. He tried to say it through the bandana tied around his mouth, but I couldn't hear a thing over the roar of the crowd, and I couldn't see enough of his mouth move to read his lips. After a second, he rolled over to it so his back was to me and started tapping his bound hands against the floor. Our code, not the code of honor, the secret code we'd used on the walls between our rooms at night. I watched his hands tapping away, but I had as much trouble reading them now as I had when I'd watched him on the Al Qaeda video. I remembered Mickey rapping out the sounds as I closed my eyes. I did the same thing now. I closed my eyes and put my ear to the wooden floor of the float. Tap, 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 tap. I frowned. Darius was tapping out the code for pretending to go to sleep. Was he seriously suggesting we just close our eyes and wait for the inevitable? I opened my eyes and shook my head angrily at him. He gave me the tap again, then rolled back over. Then I got it. The way we always pretended to sleep when our parents checked our rooms at nights was to roll over. Darius just wanted me to roll over. I rocked and rolled over again. Moments later, I felt Darius's hands on the ropes that bound me. Our wrists were bound so we couldn't untie ourselves, but our hands were free enough to untie each other. As he loosened the ropes, I pulled and twisted my hands, and at last they came free. I quickly rolled back over and untied the ropes they bound Darius's hands. Then we bent over sideways in the short crawl space to untie our feet and ripped the gags from our mouths. We were free. The crowd roared. Something big had just happened in the game. We didn't have much time. I'll look for the timer, Darius yelled in my ear. You find a way out. Chapter 81. My heart was racing. I crawled around until I found an access panel in the bottom. It was barred, but not too much strongly. I kicked at it with my heels until the outside latch snapped and the trap door swung open. I could see a well-lit gray concrete floor below. More music boomed from the field. Something by you two? A TV timeout? I hope so. I waved to Darius, and he crawled over to me. I found the timer, he yelled in my ear. There's no off switch, and I don't know if I can pull out the wires without setting it off. We have to clear the area first. He pointed to the hole. Security guard. We nodded, understanding this was no time for heroics. We needed to get word to the stadium authorities, and pronto. I climbed down through the trapdoor and slithered out from under the wheeled float. Darius followed me. I helped Darius to his feet beside the float. We were in a concrete staging area below the stands. The corner of one of the end zones was visible 100 yards away through two big open doors. Adam was out there. I suddenly realized he and his mom and dad and somebody else he had decided to take with him instead of me. What do you know, Adam? You were right. I thought I made it to the Super Bowl after all. The space where we stood was packed with people. Gaudily dressed dancers, kids with flags and banners, 5 different college marching bands, people in puppet like animal costumes, tech guys and roadies, cameramen, people with headsets and clipboards shouting positions at the performers. And then there was me and Darius, dusty and rumbled, blinking in the light, but at least I was in jeans and a t-shirt. Darius wore dirty white robes and was scrawny and bearded, looking like the terrorist everyone believed he was. All right, people, 20 seconds to showtime, a woman announced through a bullhorn. 20 seconds? I spied a security guard among the sequined masses, and Darius and I pushed our way toward him. His eyes raked over us with a deeply suspicious look. Who are you? He demanded. Where are your access passes? There's a bomb on the float, Darius said without preamble. You have to get all these people out of here. The security guard looked panicked. We'd used the B word, and you never use the B word unless you really meant it. You're that soldier, the guard said, recognizes Darius from TV, and you're his brother. He fumbled for his gun, drew it, and aimed it at us. Don't move. Don't you move. I'm calling this in. Frustration overwhelmed me. No, we were trying to save people. You don't get it, I started to say, but Darius put a hand on my chest and stepped in front of me. Yes, good. Call it in, Darius said. Tell them there's a bomb in the float. Tell them to clear the stadium. Darius was right. It didn't matter what they thought of us right now. It didn't matter if they zip tied our hands and feet and strung us up on the pole. We could explain everything later. All that mattered right now was getting everyone out of the way of the bomb. The security guard kept the gun pointed at us with one hand and reached for his walkie-talkie with the other. 151 to dispatch, 151 to dispatch, he said. A shot boomed behind us, and a red bullet hole appeared in the middle of the security guard's forehead. With a stunned look, he fell down and dead on the floor. Chapter 82. Screams, panic, shouts, the staging area became absolute pandemonium. As the performance and stage crew pushed every which way to get out, Darius pushed me to the ground before another shot rang out, the bullet hitting a woman in front of us in the marching band uniform. More screams, more panic. I turned, trying to see where the shots were coming from. There on the float, a roadie with a gun. Darius saw him too. He grabbed the fallen security guard's gun. Stay down, he told me, and he threw himself into the mayhem, going for the shooter. I stayed down. The timer on the explosives had to be set to go off sometime during the halftime show, which was supposed to start any second now. I could crawl back inside the float and try to disarm the timer, but how? If Darius, a trained Army Ranger, couldn't do it, neither could I. Not alone. I needed help. Help. Mickey Hagan was a phone call away. I dug through the dead security guard's pockets, trying to ignore for the moment that I was digging through a dead security guard's pockets. He had to have one, yes, a cell phone, and there was no passcode to enter. A trusting security guard? What were the odds? My thumb hung in space over the phone screen as I tried to remember the phone number Mickey had given me. I'd memorized it, but the chaos, the gunshots, the screams, was the first part 359 or 395? I didn't. I reared back to hurl the phone against the wall in frustration. No, relax, breathe, I told myself. This is what Dane warned you about, the anger. You can control it. I let the sound of my own pounding heart rise in my ears, let it push out all the screams and yelling and shooting, no distractions, no doubts, no second guesses. I punched in the number and brought the phone to my ear. Consolidated Services, a woman answered. No, I dialed the wrong number. I hung up, my hands shaking. Any second now, I expected the C4 behind me to explode, blowing me and everyone else to smithereens. I tried to clear my head again, block out all the distractions, and pushed in the number I thought I'd memorized. Consolidation Services, the same woman answered. Damn it, I pulled the phone away from my ear and almost mashed the end call button, but suddenly I had a thought. I brought the phone back to my ear. I need to talk to Mickey Hagan, I told the woman. One moment, she said. Chapter 83. She was transferring me. Either I was about to get some other Mickey Hagan, who was vice president of Consolidated Services Marketing Division or something, or Consolidated Services was the front number for a CIA operator. Hagan said that familiar Irish voice. Mickey, it's Cameron. Listen, we don't have a lot of time. I hurriedly explained about the Super Bowl and the bomb. If I got out of this alive, there would be time to tell him about everything else. Find cover and stay on the line, Mickey told me. All business. I'm going to make some calls. I looked around for a place to hide. There were more floats, more stage equipment, but none of those were going to survive that blast. I needed to be out of this area, out of the stadium, far, far away. Another shot exploded and another security guard went down. The room was finally clearing, and in the wake of the stampeding performers, I saw 3 more security guards down on the floor, all shot dead. But where was Darius? I ran through the maze of floats and fallen band instruments looking for him, worried I'd find him bleeding on the floor like the rest. But there he was on a big float designed to look like a football helmet. He was spinning, turning every which way to try and find the shooter, who was climbing up behind him. Darius, look out, I called, which was stupid because the shooter heard me too. The roadie turned and shot at me. He missed, and I dove for cover behind a giant speaker. More shots. I felt the bullets hit the speaker behind me, heard them smashing the vinyl and wood. Then there was a cry and a thud, and I peeked out to see Darius wrestling with the shooter on the bottom of the float. He had leaped onto the shooter from above. I had to help. I stuffed the phone in my pocket, snatched up the first weapon I could find, a trumpet, which hardly qualified as a weapon, but I had no choice, and ran for the platform like a safety homing in on a wide receiver. The shooter still had his gun, and Darius had the shooter's arms stretched out wide, protecting himself the same way Dane had taught me, but it wasn't protecting me. The gun went off in my direction, and I ducked stupidly like I could actually dodge a speeding bullet. I kept moving, though, bobbing and weaving, trying to avoid the swaying barrel of his gun. When I was finally close enough, I hit the shooter in the head with the business end of the trumpet. The blow knocked him out cold, and he dropped his gun over the side. Thanks, but we still have a bomb to worry about. Darius said, right, the bomb. Mickey, I pulled the phone back out. Mickey, are you there? Cameron, yes, Mickey said. I need you to get out of there. I've got a bomb squad on the way. There won't be time, I told him. All right, Mickey said. I've got someone on the line to help defuse the bomb. Is anyone else? Hands in the air, someone shouted, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Half a dozen stadium security guards wearing flak jackets and black ball caps had just run in the room and were pointing their pistols at me. They couldn't see Darius. He was around the other side of the float, and he ducked down to stay hidden. Put your hands in the air now, the guard shouted again. Cameron, Darius whispered, meaning I should do what he said. I groaned and raised my hands, the bomb ticking away steadily behind me. Chapter 84. The security guards advanced, guns pointed straight at us. You, Cameron Smith, the lead guard asked. Yes, I said I had forgotten that people knew me. That my face had been on TV on the internet all this time. The security guard lowered his weapon and signaled to others to do the same. CIA says he's good, he told his men. Make sure everybody else is out of this area. Now, I couldn't believe it. The guards ignored me and ran off, some checking the people on the ground, others making sure there was no one left in the surrounding rooms and corridors. I glanced at Darius, still hiding behind the float. We didn't know if the CIA had cleared him or not. The lead guard climbed up on the float, shaped like a football. This the shooter? The lead guard asked me as he pointed to the unconscious guy. Yeah, I said. I knocked him out with a trumpet. The security guard bound the man's wrist with a zip tie and hauled him away. And I remembered that Mickey was still on the phone. Hey, I said, sorry, guards showed up, but they knew who I was. That was fast. Told you I made some calls, Mickey said. Cameron, who else is with you? Dane, Aaliyah, Jimmy? He still didn't know that Dane was dead or that Jimmy had sold us out. And Aaliyah, was she dead too? No, I said, just Darius. Mickey was silent for a moment. Cameron, I need you to tell me straight now. Were you right about him? Do you trust him? Is Darius one of the good guys? I glanced at Darius, still crouching behind the float to hide from the guards. Yes, I was able to say at last. It was an amazing relief, even here in the midst of all this madness. All right, then, Mickey said. I want you to put Darius on the phone, and then I want you to get out of there. But you're to do anything and everything I tell you. Do you remember me saying that? Well, these many moons ago? And you nodded, which I took to mean, yes, Mr. Hagan, I will, under penalty of death, do every last thing you tell me to without question or argument. Now give the phone to Darius and get yourself clear. He's an Army Ranger. He signed on for this, and if worse comes to worst, I'd like to send at least one of the Smith boys home to their parents in one piece. I wanted to argue, but I knew he was right, and precious seconds were ticking away. It's for you, I said, handing Darius the phone. Yes, Darius said. He listened for a moment and stood up straight. Yes, sir, he said. If Mickey could have seen him salute, Darius would have. Through the beard and dirty robes, I could finally see the soldier underneath again. Darius ran for the float we'd crawled out of. Yes, sir, he said into the phone. Yes, sir. Darius disappeared underneath the float. Mickey had told me to get out of there, and every cell in my body was screaming for me to do just that, but I couldn't leave Darius there without trying to help. But what could I do? If I crawled up inside the float, I'd only be in his way. I spun around, looking desperately for anything I could do to help, and saw the truck attached to the float. Of course, I could drive the float out onto the field, get it out from under the bleachers. If the bomb did go off, it wouldn't take a quarter of the stadium with it. I jumped inside the open cab. It wasn't a regular truck, it was a special car for hauling stadium sets around, like a bigger, beefier golf cart. I flipped the on switch and pressed the gas pedal, and the truck started to move slowly, very, very slowly. It was like driving one of those cars at an amusement park that have a rail down the middle so you can't drive off the course. I kept nudging forward in my seat, urging the thing on like a horse, trying to get it to move faster. Come on, come on, come on. The truck emerged from the tunnel and into the giant stadium. I'd been to University of Phoenix Stadium for Cardinals games before, but I'd never been down at field level. From the ground, the place looked enormous. 5 levels of seats swept up and away from the field, and 200 feet above, the giant white trusses that held a retractable roof stretched from one end of the building to the other. Straight ahead of me, on the other side of the stadium, was the 5-story tall scoreboard. The giant cardinal mural above it replaced with the Super Bowl logo. The timer on the scoreboard said there were only 5 minutes left in the halftime break. If the Black Widow had timed the explosion for right when the halftime show was ending, right when the fireworks went off and the confetti shot into the air, and everybody was standing and cheering, Darius had less than 5 minutes to defuse that bomb, or we were finished. Chapter 85. Less than 5 minutes. I didn't know how much of the explosion was supposed to reach the stands, but all those performers and bands and all the fans who would have been on the field to dance around during the halftime show would have been dead. It would have been horrible, and 100 million people would have watched it on TV. But even if the bomb exploded now, we had already foiled the Black Widow. The game had been postponed, the halftime show was canceled, and fans were streaming toward the exits. The scoreboard was asking people to leave in a slow and orderly fashion due to a gas leak in the stadium. A gas leak? Well, I suppose that was better than telling them there was this truckload of plastic explosives driving out onto the field. The tow truck attached to the float moved achingly slow, but I had at least hit the grass of the field. Come on, come on, come on. I told it. I glanced at the scoreboard again. Less than 4 minutes. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw somebody coming down the aisle in the lower stands, not going up. It was a camera crew. Some TV crew was trying to get a closer for a story. No, get back, I yelled, waving my arms. Get back. But they kept coming. I glanced at the scoreboard. 3.5 minutes. If they got too close, the blast would kill them. Get back, go away, I shouted, but they couldn't hear me. They were closer, though, and I recognized the reporter leading the cameraman down the steps. It was Emily Reed, the pretty ESPN commentator wearing a knee-length red skirt and a white blouse. Emily Reed, when I was little, my parents took us on a vacation to the beach at Rocky Point, a resort down in Mexico. I was so little I wasn't supposed to go into the water by myself, but I saw Darius doing it and charged in on my own. The waves weren't very big, but I was tiny, and the seawater swept over me, tumbling me end over end, filling my eyes and ears and lungs, and dumping me back onto the beach in sputtering, wailing mess. I felt like that now. Images, movements, voices washing over me, drowning me like seawater. Emily Reed interviewing football players on the sidelines, the Black Widow standing in the doorway, her gun still pointed at Dane's dead body, Emily Reed sharing a joke with another announcer in the studio, the Black Widow laughing at Darius for being such a dupe. Emily Reed talking about the Super Bowl on the TV in the motel room. Bashira Ansari's name in the report on Aaliyah's computer in the motel room. The wave passed over me, leaving me dazed and breathless, and I suddenly knew where I'd heard Bashira Ansari's voice before. Emily Reed was the Black Widow. Chapter 86. I didn't know how or why Bashira Ansari would be working for ESPN, but I was dead sure it was her. Emily Reed was the Black Widow, and I was the only person who knew it. My first thought was to call Mickey Hagan and tell him, but Darius had the phone with him, trying to disable the explosive in the float. I stared at Emily Reed as the truck churned slowly toward the center of the field. She had her back to me now, talking to the camera, reporting on the sudden, alarming interruption to the most watched sporting event in America. The interruption she herself had planned. I had to do something. Tell someone, stop her. The Black Widow was right there in the lower section of the stadium, not 100 feet from me. I leapt out of the truck and ran for the stands. The float shuddered to a stop behind me, with Darius and all those explosives still inside. He would disarm the bomb in time, I was sure. He had to. I glanced at the scoreboard. 2 minutes. 2-minute warning, I thought. No timeouts left. 6 points down, 40 yards to the end zone. No distractions, no doubts, no second guesses. I put my head down like I was running the 100-yard dash. I hurtled over the abandoned benches and equipment on the sidelines. I jumped the wall into the stands. 1 minute, 5 seconds. I raced up the concrete steps toward Emily Reed. The cameraman finally saw me coming behind her and pulled his head away from the camera, trying to figure out who I was and what I was doing. Emily Reed noticed, and she turned. I practically ran into her, trying to stop. Emily Reed? Isn't Emily Reed? I said to the camera painting. panting for my sprint. Her real name's Bashira Ansaria. She's the widow of terrorist Hadair Ansaria, and she's a terrorist herself. She put plastic explosives on on that halftime show. The cameraman looked over his viewfinder at me like I was crazy. Emily Reed, Bashira Ansaria, looked startled, but only momentarily. Then she regained her calm. We must have been live. She laughed humorously. I'm sorry, Bill, she said to whoever was back in the studio. There's a young man here with a crazy story about explosives. She put them there. I told the camera, talking quickly. Her name was Bashira Ansaria, not Emily Reed. Her husband was an Al Qaeda terrorist killed in a drone strike. She planned to blow up the Super Bowl halftime show as revenge. I must have looked as crazy as I sounded. The cameraman shook his head, and Emily Reed gave me a pitying look. I'm sorry, Bill, Emily said to the camera. We'll have to get back to you with more on this situation once we have less interruptions. Security obviously has greater concerns right now. I'm telling you, I said, moving between Emily Reed and the camera. She's a terrorist. She put a bomb on. The stage behind us exploded, knocking us all to the ground. Chapter 87. Pieces of torn, twisted metal and chunks of sod rained down all around me, and I curled up into a ball. My brain was pounding, my ears rang with a constant hum, like a house security system warning you to put it in your code before the alarm goes off. I shook my head, trying to remember who I was, where I was, and what I was doing. I pulled myself up on one of the red stadium chairs beside me, and then I saw the hole. The middle of the football field, from one 40-yard line to the other, was one giant gaping hole. But it wasn't just a big dirt crater. I had forgotten the University of Phoenix Stadium was unique in all the world for having a retractable field. It was too hot in Arizona to play outside. A natural grass wouldn't grow in a dome. The architects who designed the stadium made it so the natural grass field slid out on a huge 2-acre tray. On game days, it slid back in. So underneath that retractable green grass field inside the stadium wasn't more dirt. Underneath were 546 steel wheels, 16 metal rails, an irrigation system and drainage ditch, and 76 motors to move the whole thing back and forth, all of which had been blown up when the float exploded. The float with Darius inside it. Darius, I said. Darius, no. I held myself to my feet and almost went tumbling down to the concrete steps. I was still dizzy from the blast, and I could feel blood trickling down my forehead. I stumbled downhill and had to catch myself on one of the stadium seats. The seat was loose, wobbly, and I almost fell down again. I frowned at the seat, and then I saw it was almost ripped in half. A piece of metal shrapnel from the exploded machinery underneath the field had split it almost in two. It was the same all over the lower stands. Too, metal debris were everywhere, and dozens, hundreds of those hard, seemingly indestructible plastic stadium seats were torn to shreds throughout the lower sections. The Black Widow hadn't needed enough plastic explosives to take down the stadium. With all that gear under the field and all the equipment that was supposed to be on top of it during the halftime show, the explosion would have killed thousands of people. Instead, it had killed only one. Darius, I screamed, staggering down the steps toward the smoking crater. Darius, behind me, over the ringing around my sound in my ears, I heard the security guard yelling out as he ran down the steps. I turned to see the guard checking on the cameraman, who lay on his back, his face bloody. Emily Reed lifted herself up on hands and knees behind the security guard, still wobbly, and pulled a pistol from his holster. Before he could turn around, she shot him in the back, and he fell across the wounded cameraman. I took a step up toward her, but she wheeled on me. I was a few rows away from her now, but close enough to be staring down the barrel of that pistol. I put my hands up to show her I wasn't going to do anything stupid. I was so upset and disoriented that anything I did at this point would be stupid. I should have killed you and your brother before I put you inside that float. Bashira Ansaria said. She was Bashira Ansaria, the Black Widow. Emily Reed had just been her cover. I worked for years to avenge the murder of my husband. Years. And you and your brother ruined it all. Your husband was a terrorist, I told her. Hadan Ansario was a hero, she yelled. She raised a gun and shot at me. I flinched, ducking again like that would do any good, but she was obviously still shaken up from the blast and had missed. When I looked up again, she was running up the steps, her back bloody and her blouse shredded from the explosion. It was stupid, but I ran after her. She had killed Darius, and I wasn't going to let her get away. The cameraman was still pinned under the dead security guard, but he was conscious, and I realized he had been pointing his camera at us the whole time. He looked at me differently now as I ran toward him, shocked but no longer skeptical. I didn't care. I had to stop the Black Widow. I leaped over him, taking the stairs two at a time. Ansaria heard me coming and turned to shoot at me over her shoulder, but I was ready this time. I tackled her from behind like I was blindsiding a quarterback, slamming us both down onto the concrete steps. Her gun went flying, clattering down through the shredded stadium seats. I was stunned by the fall, and the Black Widow was too fast for me. She kicked me in the head, dazing me, and scrambled to her feet. I tried to pull myself up, but I was too slow. She was going to get away. Then suddenly there was someone standing in her way. waiting to intercept her. Darius? Chapter 88. Darius was alive. I didn't have time to ask how. He and the Black Widow began to fight. Darius was good, but Bashiria and Saria was better. She fought with a fury, born of rage and desperation. She got a punch into Darius's stomach, and when he bent double to she kneed him in the head. He staggered back, almost tripping over the stair behind him, and just managed to right himself before a half-blocked punch sent him down on his butt. Cameron, Lex Luthor on the hover dam, Darius cried, the story from one of our childhood games into the backyard came flashing back to me, and I remembered how we dealt with the evil genius Lex Luthor. I crawled up behind Bashiria Ansaria on my hands and knees. Darius kicked at her with both legs. She stumbled back, tripped over me, and went tumbling backward down the stairs. Darius helped me up. Lex Luthor always was a pushover, he said. Darius, how are you alive? The stage. I couldn't defuse it, he said. Too complicated, too many fail-safes. She really was an evil genius. Come on. I looked down to where Bashiria Ansaria lay on the concrete. She wasn't moving, but we had to make sure she didn't get away. But when did you get out? I asked, hurrying behind him down the stairs. When it was obvious I wasn't going to be able to disarm it. Mickey told me to get out. I had already felt the stage moving, so I knew you had driven it out onto the field where it wouldn't do as much damage. He looked around at the busted stadium seats. Or so I thought. Anyway, the stage had just stopped moving when I climbed out. I was going to grab you and run, but you were already running for the stand, so I just took off in the other direction. It took me forever to get back over here and help you out. I'm sorry, I had no idea she was here. We stood over the body of Bashiria Ansaria, a.k.a. Emily Reed, a.k.a. the Black Widow. One of her arms was badly twisted, and she had a painful-looking broken leg, but her chest was still moving up and down. She was unconscious, but alive. Police, actual police, not just stadium security guards, rushed down toward us, guns pointed at us. Hold it. Darius and Cameron Smith, you're under arrest, hands in the air. One of them cried. I'd forgotten we were both still wanted terrorists, and there was a bomb hole the size of a Grand Canyon in the floor of the stadium behind us. No call from Mickey Hagan was going to get us out of this one, not until we'd been able to tell our side of the story, and maybe not even then for Darius. We put our hands up, and the officers moved in to handcuff us. Be the strongest of the strong, I said. Darius managed to smile. Be the bravest of the brave, he replied. Help the helpless, always tell the truth, be loyal, I said. Never give up, he said. And kill all monsters, we said together as we stepped over the unconscious Bashiria Ansaria and were taken away. We were in this together now. Me and Darius, just like always, the Smith brothers against the world, and we'd lived by the code, both of us, all the way until the end. Chapter 89. I told my story to the CIA, the FBI, and the DHS, and then I told it again and again and again. They poked and prodded and questioned every little detail, but in the end, they were satisfied. They might not have been happy about the means, but they were happy about the ends. But I didn't know if everything I said would help Darius or Mickey, and nothing I said could ever help Dane again. In return for my story, I got Bashira Ansaria's. The CIA had quickly put the pieces together. When her husband died in an American drone strike, she swore to get revenge. She left her children with a sister in Syria, came to America on a forged passport, and started a new life for herself, a very different one from her life as a Muslim extremist. She shed her veil for Western clothes, went to school to become a sports reporter, all with the idea of bringing America to its knees with a vicious, unexpected terrorist attack on a major sporting event. She worked patiently for years, establishing her credibility and waiting for the perfect opportunity to do the utmost damage. She was playing the long game, one she learned from her husband, a game of intricate plots, false clues, and misdirection. The Super Bowl had been her magnum opus, but we had taken the poison out of the Black Widow's bite. They called in a doctor to examine me. I was fine, except for some cuts from the flying shrapnel and a mild dehydration. They gave me water and bandaged my forehead. Then I was free to go. Free to go. My parents were too. They were waiting for me in the lobby of the government building in Arizona I'd been brought to. Cameron, John, my mother said with relief, wrapping me in her arms. I hugged her and Dad like I would never let them go. They both looked haggard and older, not somehow, but also relieved. At least they knew now I was okay and that Darius was alive and innocent. My parents had been detained by the Department of Homeland Security the entire time, each in their own cells while I was in mine. When I escaped, they'd been put under even stricter security. The DHS hadn't told them anything more than that I'd run away, and I had to tell them the whole story all over again as we were driven home. Telling the story to federal agents in a debriefing room was one thing. Telling my parents, who gasped and interjected and looked terrified the whole time, was another experience altogether. It made me realize just how surreal the whole thing had been. It was like I had lived a spy thriller movie. And now what? Would I really just go back to being Cameron Smith, high school senior? That seemed even more surreal. And what about Darius? His absence felt so profound as I sat between my parents in the back seat of the government car, their arms still around me. He was still being detained and questioned, and no one would tell us when he was going to be released, if he was going to be released. No matter what, I hoped we'd be able to see him soon. We reached our street where TV vans and camera crews waited for us just like before. I sagged in my seat. This again? Still the media attention, still the accusations, the doubt, the insinuations. After everything Darius and I had done, the mob of TV reporters parted for the government car to pull into our driveway, filming everything. My parents and I sat in the car for a long moment, staring at the house we hadn't been back to in months. The word terrorist was still spray painted on the front. Are we ready for this? Dad asked. He reached out and squeezed my hand. Mom took my other hand. Slowly, the three of us stepped outside. The questions hit us intensely. Cameron, what's it like to be vindicated? Are you bringing legal action against the government for your wrongful incarceration? Will Darius be released soon? Have you spoken to him? How did you know Darius wasn't a traitor? What's it like to be a hero, Cameron? I stumbled on the walkway to our front door and stopped to look back at the camera crews. They weren't calling me a Darius terrorist anymore. They were on our side, but how did they know? The federal agents had grilled me like Darius was public enemy number one and I was public enemy number two. Like they didn't believe a word I'd said. Cameron, Dad called. He'd unlocked the front door and I followed him inside. The phone was ringing again, but Dad went straight to it and unhooked it. Mom stood in the middle of the living room, looking around at the house like it was someplace she'd never been before. Dad went to her and hugged her. I thought about going to my room or maybe taking a long overdue shower, but I turned the TV on instead. It was all in Darius and the Super Bowl all the time. The ESPN cameraman had caught the whole thing, me confronting Bashira and Saria, the explosion, her shooting the security guard, her ranting about her husband's murder and shooting at me. So that was how they knew, how everyone knew. The feds had made me tell them the story again and again, even though they'd had video evidence. It was bizarre watching myself seeing the whole thing from outside. Mom and Dad watched with me, my mom putting a hand on my arm in concern every time there was danger, as if this time I might actually get shot or killed. All anybody on TV could talk about was the terrorist attack on the Super Bowl, the terrorist attack foiled by the brothers Smith. Another station had interviews with kids from my school. They never doubted me. They said they knew I wasn't a terrorist the whole time. I was so humble, so friendly. Julia Gary called me her boyfriend. Adam Collier explained how I was supposed to have been in the audience at the Super Bowl with him. It was a different song and dance now that I was a national hero. I decided to go have that shower after all. Chapter 90. A few days later, I sat alone in my room, staring at the stack of textbooks on my desk. I was supposed to go back to school tomorrow. Life goes on and all that. The pep squad had probably already hung a banner over the front door, welcoming me back. The principal would call a special assembly to honor the senior who saved everybody from a terrorist attack at the Super Bowl. Adam would be waiting to clap me on the back, and Julia would be waiting to parade me around on her arm. They would all treat me differently than they had the last time I'd seen them. That was the problem. Mom knocked on my door and opened it. Cameron, you have a visitor, she said. If it's Adam, tell him I don't want to talk to him, I said without turning around. Adam had called the house at least once every day, and I always told Mom to tell him I wasn't home. Well, I don't know if you'll know me from Adam, said Mickey Hagan, but I'd like to say hello nonetheless. Mickey, I ran over to him and we hugged. Mom smiled and left us alone. I hope you've been on your best behavior, Mickey said, glancing around my room. I dare say your home is still bugged from before you were detained. My house had been bugged, but of course it had been bugged. But why was Mickey telling me now? Then I realized Mickey was telling me to be careful about what I said to him, in case someone was still listening, and we had a lot to talk about. Are you still with the CIA? I asked him, choosing my words carefully. Did you get in trouble? It's a funny thing that, Mickey said, the CIA appears to be under the impression that I had nothing to do with your escape and subsequent adventures until you called the CIA hotline, looking for a friendly voice to help you get out of a jam. Someone told them that an ex-Green Beret named Dane Redmond was entirely responsible for putting the team together, that extricated you from DHS headquarters in Washington, blew up a stash of plastic explosives in Nashville, and confronted the Black Widow in the mountains of Arizona. You don't say. I do say, said Mickey. He motioned for me to sit on the bed and took a seat in my desk chair. Now, where could they have heard such a wild story as all that? I have no idea, I said, but I did know it was exactly the same story I told the FBI and the CIA and the DHS over and over again. And of course, Dane Redmond isn't alive to confirm or deny any of this. He died a hero, I said, meaning it. And your country agrees, Mickey said. They have posthumously upgraded Dane Redmond's discharge status from other than honorable to a general discharge, which he would have much appreciated. I know, the upgrade has the added advantage of restoring his benefits, including his veteran's pension, which will come as a great comfort to his ex-wife and young daughter. He has a daughter? I didn't know. I'd made up all the stuff about Dane being the brains behind everything just to get Mickey out of trouble. I had no idea it would fix Dane's discharge status or actually help the family I didn't know he had. And Aaliyah, I asked. Mickey knew what I had meant. I hadn't had a chance to tell the version of events to Aaliyah if she went into her debriefing and told the truth. She corroborated the whole thing, Hagen said. Thankfully, she has been well trained to receive and analyze information rather than volunteer it. I felt like Mickey was scolding me, but only slightly. I deserved it some too. If I hadn't been careful, the government could easily have caught me out in the lie, and then it would have been worse for everyone. But it sounded like it had all worked out, even better than I had hoped. All's well that ends well, as the bard once said, Mickey said with a smile, letting me know all was forgiven. What about Jimmy? I asked. Ah, that's one that didn't end so well. Jimmy got away. We're still after him, but he's very good at not being found, as you might guess. All part of the game, I said, repeating Jimmy's favorite phrase. That it is, I suppose, Mickey said. That it is. Chapter 91. Mickey tapped the big stack of textbooks on my desk. Back to school for you, then, I see. No rest for the weary. I don't care about the schoolwork part, I said. But the non-schoolwork part, he asked, picking up on my tone. I looked at my hands. You're the only one who ever had faith in me, Mickey, I said. The only one who believed me right from the start and never gave up on me. Ah, I see, Mickey said. Your friends at school, they weren't so faithful, and now they're back on the Cameron Smith bandwagon, trumpets and cymbals in hand. I'm not sure I want anybody as a friend who wasn't there for me when things got bad. I can understand that, Mickey said, but tell me true, Cameron, how many times did you doubt your brother and all this? How many times did you give up on him only to come around again when you found out you were wrong? That stung. Mickey knew better than anybody what it was like to believe wholly and completely in a person and then have him break your heart. But unlike Mickey, I had given up on Darius more than once before I'd finally learned the truth. Mickey had believed and been burned. I'd believed and disbelieved and believed again and disbelieved again, and Darius had been innocent after all. I don't mean to punish you, Mickey said. Heaven knows I've punished myself plenty enough that I don't need someone else to help me, nor do you. I'm only after pointing out that you doubted your brother once or twice, even when you were closer to him than any other person on God's green earth. Now think about your friends at school. They're not nearly so close to you as you are to your brother. Think about what they heard and what they saw and how they felt. Can you really blame them for not believing in you when they barely know you? The real you, I mean? Yes, I said, just to be perverse. I said, Adam knew the real me. He's been my best friend since we were kids, and he knows you even better now, Mickey said. The real you. He's maybe never seen before. The real maybe you've never seen before. There was something to that, something I hadn't been able to talk about with anybody since I'd gotten back. I'd been relieved to finally come home, to be normal again, but at the same time, I missed it. The excitement, the way I was valued by the team and not treated like a kid, the feeling that I was doing something important. I didn't like the thought of good people dying, of me dying, but the rest of it, I found myself longing for. Don't let these fair weather friends of yours off the hook, Mickey said. I'm not saying to do that. They need to know they hurt you. That's what'll keep them from hurting you the same way next time. But don't push them away either, Cameron. What good will that do? Yes, you'll graduate in a few months' time, and then you could blow them all a big fat kiss goodbye. But in the meantime, you'll just be friendless and alone. Not to mention missing out on all those beautiful young lassies who will surely want to date the hero of the Super Bowl. I blushed and laughed. Aha, Mickey said. You begin to see the wisdom in it, I think, he smiled. Just so hard, I said, and it always will be, Mickey said wearily. Some people will always think the less of you for the color of your skin, for the country of your mother's birth, or for the despicable actions of someone who kind of, maybe, on a good day, in the right light, looks a bit like you, which means you always have to be the better man. You go back to school and be all brawdy and mean and push people away, and they'll turn on you again just as fate. He's just what we thought he was all along. They'll say, the best thing for you to do is to keep living by the code of honor of yours and proving the haters wrong. You going to West Point will go a long way toward helping with doing that. But I'm not going to West Point, I said. Congresswoman Barnes withdrew her nomination, and yet, like the young lassies lining up to date you, so, too, are American politicians falling all over themselves to recommend you for West Point again. Mickey said he took a letter out of his jacket pocket, including this recommendation from the Vice President of the United States, with whom I happened to put in a good word. I took the letter from him in disbelief. Sure enough, it was a glowing letter of recommendation right below the Vice Presidential seal, signed by the Vice President himself. If you still want it, that is, Mickey said. Do you? Yes, I said, still mesmerized by the Vice President's signature. Yes, it's what I've always wanted. It's not going to be easy for you there either, Mickey said. You'll have even more haters and doubters than before. I know, I said. Maybe nothing was ever going to be easy for me again. Not now that I'd had my eyes opened. But that didn't mean I wanted to stick my head under my pillow and hide. Good then, Mickey said. There's good news for me as well. Seems my work in all this business has earned me a bit more respect at the company, as befits my pay grade. I've been put in charge of my own counterintelligence team at the CIA. That's terrific, Mickey, I told him. It is. I've already recruited a couple of people for it, too, he said, including Miss Elias Saeed. Now I'm wondering if I might not entice you to join us. My mouth hung open so far must have brushed the floor. What, me? You'd have to keep up with your studies at West Point at the same time, of course, and that won't be easy. They keep you busy there, believe you me. Yes, I'll join. I'll do whatever it takes, I said. I still couldn't believe it. Good then. That's settled. First things first. I want you to start training to fight. Pick up where you left off with Dane. Mickey slapped his knees and stood. Let's go meet your new trainer. What, now? I asked. I had school tomorrow. No time like the present, Mickey said, beckoning me down the hall. Chapter 92. Cameron Smith, meet our team's new tactical specialist, Mickey said. Darius Smith. My brother sat on the couch between Mom and Dad, Mom's hand holding his. Darius' dress uniform looked 5 sizes too big on his emaciated body, but he'd bathed and shaved and had a haircut and was starting to look like his old self again. He got up from the couch and we hugged for a long time. Hello, cadet, he said, holding me out at an arm's length. Good to see you again. Good to see you too, I told him which was a major understatement. There was so much I wanted to say to Darius, so much I wanted to talk about, and I could tell he felt the same way. But it wasn't a conversation either of us wanted to have with an audience. Come on, let's go outside, Darius said, nodding toward the backyard. I looked at Mickey Hagan. Go on, then, he said. I'll stay here and tell your parents all about our little arrangement. I followed Darius outside. It was almost the beginning of February, but it was still 65 degrees in sunny Arizona weather. Are you staying for a while? I asked. Here? Darius nodded. Until I moved to D.C. to work with Mickey, I'll still be in the Army, just attached to the CIA. Did Mickey sign you up too? Darius asked. Yeah. Good. There were chairs on the patio, but we stood looking out over the small plot of green grass wedged in between round gravel paths. You remember when we used to play Rossum and Shivas out here? Darius asked. Of course, I said. You do too? Or else you wouldn't have been able to give me all those clues. We were quiet again for a while. Maybe Darius was remembering all our silly adventures. I was remember putting a gun to his head. I'm sorry, we both said at the same time. Darius laughed softly, and I smiled to smite myself. You first, Darius said. Oh, me first? I said, half kidding. How's that work? Mine's going to take longer, Darius said. I took a deep breath. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. But you did, Darius said. I shook my head. Not all the time. They told me things. Told me you hated the government for the way you were treated after 9/11, that you went to Washington senior year to spy for Al Qaeda, that you were a Muslim. Darius closed his eyes and sighed. Well, obviously, I didn't go to Washington to spy for Al Qaeda. I went because Sofia Ramirez was going, and she was totally hot. I laughed, and of course, I don't hate the government, Darius said. I mean, yeah, I hated the way people treated me after 9/11. You don't know how it was. You were so young. I think I know a little bit how it was now, I told him. He nodded at that. But what about the prayer beads? I asked. The internet searches. Darius looked off into the distance. I need something more in life, something spiritual. It's really tough as a soldier. The things you see, the things you do. I needed to find some kind of meaning in everything, and I wanted to reconnect with where Mom come from, who we are. So I started looking into Islam, other stuff too, non-religious stuff, but they probably didn't mention my poetry, books by Rumi or Hafez. No, they didn't. I couldn't believe it. My brother reading poetry? But why didn't you tell us that you were starting to become more religious? Darius shrugged. I felt like it was something I needed to do on my own. I was doing this for me, not for anybody else. And what was I supposed to say? I was still seeking. I still am. I don't feel like I have all the answers, but I feel like I'm on the right path. Does that make any sense? He kicked a pebble off the porch. Anyway, I'm not going to apologize for being Muslim, and I shouldn't have to just because some terrorists somewhere twist Islam to fit their own awful agenda. I nodded. He was right. It was the same thing I told the DHS when they'd asked me about our mom. Now can I say I'm sorry? My brother said, giving me a small smile. I came out here to tell you I'm sorry for dragging you into all this. I knew it would be hard for you, but I didn't know how hard. The alienation, the TV crews, the DHS taking you away in the night and interrogating you for months, and then you having to go on the run, getting shot at just to save me. If I'd known it was going to hurt you like that, put you in that kind of danger, I would have just let them kill me in Afghanistan. That hit me like a punch to the gut. I remembered how I'd only once wished that Darius had died in Afghanistan, just so I could have my old comfy life back again. I felt sick all over again for having ever doubted him. No, I told him, no, I'm just so sorry. I wasn't strong enough from the start. Are you kidding, Cameron? You risked your life to save me when you didn't have a single good reason to do it. Yes, I did, I told him. You are my brother. Darius clapped my hand and pulled me into a hug. It's you and me against the world, huh? Darius said, and I nodded. How are you doing? He asked, eyeing me seriously. I mean, just with everything. Are you sleeping okay? Nightmares after what happened in the cave? I looked down. I knew Darius was talking about that horrifying moment when had shot the terrorist, killed him. It was something I still thought of constantly. Every night before I went to sleep, I saw his face. Heard the gunshot, saw the blood, as terrifying as everything else I'd experienced had been, especially those last moments with the bomb and the explosion. The death of that man had haunted me the most. I'm not doing great with it, I told my brother truthfully, but I didn't like to talk about it. What about you? I asked my brother. You must be worse off. It's tough, Darius admitted, but I'm seeing a counselor. She specializes in this kind of stuff, and it's really been helping me deal with what happened to me. She's really good. He put a hand on my shoulder. You could talk to her, too. My first thought was, no way, I can handle this by myself. But then I remembered what Dane had said about how soldiers didn't like to talk about stuff, didn't get help when they needed it, and how it eventually ate them up inside. As much as I didn't want to talk about what happened with someone else, I promised myself I would, for Dane's sake. Yeah, I said, okay. The sliding door to the patio opened, and Mom leaned out, her hand covering the receiver on the phone. Cameron, I'm sorry to interrupt, she said. It's Adam calling again. Are you home? Behind her, I saw Mickey Hagan give me a questioning look. I glanced at my brother and back at my mother. Yeah, I told her, I am.